Marvel. Rescue Iron Man's father at the beginning. Chapter 41. A quarter of an hour later, a Blackbird fighter plane soared from Xavier's school, flying towards the mouth of the Hudson River like a black magic bird spreading its wings. In the fighter plane, apart from X-Men members Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, and Jean Grey, Colin is also impressively listed, and the atmosphere in the cabin is a bit dull. Logically speaking, Colin shouldn't be involved in the X-Men's actions, but he couldn't stand up to Professor X's plea, so he reluctantly agreed to help. In the words of Professor X, if they can have Colin's help, then their winning rate will be even greater. Logan was the first to break the dull atmosphere, and couldn't hold back the doubts in his heart and said to Colin, "Are you really sure that Magneto and the others are located in the Statue of Liberty?" As soon as this was said, Cyclops, Storm, and Jean Grey, who were on the same plane, all looked at Colin one after another, with a bit of hesitation in their expressions. "You should know that our Stark Industry has its own information channel, and some information that seems hidden to you can be easily collected from me." Colin raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard this, and made a nonsense casually. This information is definitely not what Colin got from S.H.I.E.L.D., but the foresight of the plot. Speaking of which, we have to start from the standpoint of Magneto. Magneto and Professor X have been friends for many years. Due to human reasons, they parted ways with Professor X and created Mutant Brotherhood. Because of the cruelty of World War II and the crazy attack on mutant by humans, Magneto hates humans extremely. With the launch of the Mutant Act by humans, Magneto's hatred and disgust for humans is even more extreme, so a huge amounts of conspiracy is brewing. Magneto's ability is to control any form of magnetic field, and then use special instruments to amplify it, and even emit powerful magnetic field wave particle rays, so that the human body can mutate and become a mutant. The reason why the ray is launched at the Statue of Liberty is also because tonight there will be a summit of the United Nations on the other side of the Hudson River. At that time, the leaders of various countries will participate. As long as the ray is launched, they will become mutants. Magneto wants to use this to punish humans, so that humans can become the mutant he hates, and he deeply understands the hatred and pain of mutant. As everyone knows, the mutation brought about by this kind of radiation will eventually cause the cells in the human body to explode due to the unbearable intensity of the radiation. Congressman Leonard, who was kidnapped by Magneto for experiments before, is the best example. "You mean S.H.I.E.L.D.?" Cyclops frowned slightly. "To be precise, our news channels include but are not limited to S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. may not be really reliable." Yes, whether this news is true or not, the answer will be revealed soon. Colin tapped his fingers rhythmically on the armrest, and said with a mysterious smile. Cyclops and the others exchanged glances with each other, all a little surprised. They don't understand why Professor X trusts Colin so much. After all, in their opinion, whether Colin is a mutant is still unknown. Only Chingele believed in what Colin said, and believed that Colin, who could summon magma meteor shower with his bare hands, was also the same as mutant, but his situation was a little special. Just like Chingele, she also has Phoenix Force dormant in her body, and she will even enter a state of rampage after being strongly stimulated, which is also a special form of mutant. Attention, the Statue of Liberty is coming soon. At the moment, Orla warned. Everyone looked in the direction he pointed, and they saw the standing Statue of Liberty coming into view, and the distance was getting closer and closer. At the same time, the whites of Orla's eyes instantly expanded to cover the entire pupil, causing strong winds and dark clouds to gather in the sky above the Blackbird fighters, so as to cover their whereabouts and avoid being spotted by others. Surrounded by the Hudson River, the Statue of Liberty stands high there, and it is particularly eye-catching in the night. The surface of the river is like ink, and the wind blows slowly. Above the torch of the Statue of Liberty, Magneto Eric stood proudly with outstretched arms. Overlooking the brightly lit Hudson building on the other side from a high place, Eric's cloudy eyes showed a strong color of madness. Tonight will be the end of these arrogant and ignorant human beings. Looking away from a distance, Eric turned and walked inside the torch. Here, a gold ring instrument similar to a globe is placed. And the little rascal who was kidnapped by Magneto is being held tightly by the iron chain and cannot break free. Little rascal curled up weakly in the corner, shivering in the cold wind. Little naughty, although I don't want to coerce you like this, some sacrifices are unavoidable. From now on, your name will be recorded in the annals of mutant and become an extremely glorious existence. Eric looked at the little rascal expectantly, and there was a hint of bewitching in his words. As a mutant, to a certain extent, Eric didn't want the little rascal to die, but the innate ability of the little rascal to absorb other people's abilities was what Eric liked. Activating the magnetic energy emission device will greatly consume Eric's energy and vitality, and if he fails, he may even be in danger of dying from exhaustion. However, as long as the little naughty absorbs his own abilities, he can activate the magnetic energy emitting device instead of himself. In this way, he can achieve his own conspiracy without Eric personally taking risks. Hearing Eric's words, the little rascal's eyes were full of despair. The heads of state are about to enter the venue, and it's time to act. Between the words, Eric firmly fixed the two palms of the little naughty on the docking port of the magnetic energy emission device, and at the same time ordered his subordinate Sabretooth to turn on the device. However, at this moment, a fierce fighting sound from downstairs made Eric frown. It's the X-Men, they're still here. Mystique and Toad are wrestling with them to buy time, and Eric urges them to act quickly. As soon as the words fell, there was a loud bang, and a hole was suddenly blasted into the wall, causing billows of dust to rise. After the dust dissipated, Eric took a closer look and saw two people suddenly appearing on the torch. One of them had a rough beard all over his face, and his body was burly and strong, exuding a wild aura in every gesture, and a pair of adamantium sharp claws stretched out from his fists, reflecting a cold glow under the moonlight. The other person is handsome and heroic, with sword eyebrows and star eyes, majestic, wearing a black robe that is blown by the wind, carrying a sheathed gold sword on his back, and carrying 10 different kinds of swords on the 10 fingers of his hands. The ring, with mysterious magic power flowing, looks very strange. It's you. The little rascal, who was already completely desperate, couldn't help but see the appearance of Logan and Colin. His eyes lit up, and hope was rekindled in his gloomy mood. The appearance of Colin and Wolverine gave the little naughty hope again. If I'm not mistaken, you should be Colin Stark. Why would you interfere with my good business with the X-Men? Eric frowned. He wasn't surprised by the appearance of Wolverine and others, but he didn't expect Colin to be on the list. It's nothing, it's just entrusted by a friend. Colin shrugged, a harmless smile on his face. You mean Charles? Eric narrowed his eyes, and his face suddenly became gloomy. Human beings were involved in the dispute between the mutants, which made Eric furious, but the most important thing now is to activate the magnetic ray device. Sabretooth, now is the time for you to show your loyalty. Roar. Sabretooth's beard and hair were all spread out, and he let out a beast-like roar. His powerful muscles bulged one by one, and he came rushing like a tiger descending a mountain, and the ground trembled slightly with the pedaling of his feet. Your opponent is me, and it's time to understand our grievances. Wolverine dodges to block the path of his nemesis, adamantium claws pop out from the palm of his hand, and Sabretooth wrestles with Sabretooth involuntarily. Without getting involved in the feud between Wolverine and Sabretooth, Colin walked straight to Eric. Capture the thief first, and the most decisive way to rescue the little rascal is to deal with Eric. Colin's goal is very clear. If you are sensible, don't spoil my good deeds. Seeing Colin approaching at every step, Eric spread his 5 fingers and made a pulling gesture with one hand, controlling several heavy metal iron blocks to wrap around Colin's body, intending to bind Colin's limbs. Do you think this will stop me? Colin snorted coldly, a sharp light flashed in his eyes. With a lift of his wrist, several iron fists condensed from magma suddenly swept out. The blazing and hot high temperature directly melted the iron into molten iron, which dripped on the ground and burned several fists. File-size hole. It seems that before implementing that plan, you have to be cleaned up first. A sharp cold light flashed in Eric's eyes. He opened his arms and clasped his fingers. The surrounding steel pipes, steel bars, blades, and sharp iron pieces all rose into the air. In the ear-piercing tearing air sounds, they were like thousands of arrows Sagittarius shot towards Colin's direction. Even the vibranium sword Colin was carrying on his back showed signs of attacking Colin. Resetter. Colin tapped the vibranium sword lightly with the ring on his right index finger. During the surge of magic energy, the attributes of the vibranium sword were reset in an instant, turning into a sword with almost wood attributes. Pulling the long sword in his hand, Colin danced violently with the vibranium sword, turning into sword shadows all over the sky and sweeping out. Chi. Whoosh. Although the toughness and sharpness of the wood-type vibranium sword are reduced, but under the blessing of Colin's thick and true energy, coupled with the subtlety of the Xiaoyao school's swordsmanship, the power displayed is also not to be underestimated, even reaching the level of the épée without affront, a masterful accomplishment. The dense sword shadows slashed out fiercely and quickly, and those steel blades were strangled to pieces by the sharp sword energy in an instant. At the same time, Colin's right eye was scarlet, and Sharingan started to work. Wisps of purple flames rose up, turning into ribs and arms covering Colin's whole body, showing the shape of a skull, and then the purple flames skyrocketed, gradually covering the meridians and channels displayed by chakra. Flesh and blood, it looks like an all-round defense, like a spirit possessed by a war spirit. With Susano's blessing, Colin is even more powerful and invincible. The sharp sword energy surged and overflowed in this space, and dense cracks appeared even on the ground and walls. The objects along the way were bursting and were chopped inch by inch. Even Eric had to tear the metal apart, condensed into a shield to passively defend. At the moment, Cyclops and others who have dealt with Mystique and Toad have also come to the torch floor. When they saw that Colin defeated Eric steadily, they all showed surprise. They all smacked their tongues. It took them a long time to recover. Cyclops and Storm helped Wolverine defeat Sabretooth, and Jean Grey also used her psychokinesis to save the little rascal. Everyone stepped aside to make room for Colin and Magneto, keeping their eyes on the situation. Magneto, since you have vowed for the future of Mutant, why don't you go to Justice and activate the launcher yourself, but push the little rascal who is also mutant into the fire pit. HMPH, in order to change the world, sometimes sacrifices are unavoidable. Without me, the mutant camp will have no leader. Ridiculous, you are just making excuses for your failure and ambition. Colin curled his lips and said jokingly. At the same time, Colin's internal energy poured into the vibranium sword like a spring, and then slashed out fiercely from bottom to top. I saw a flash of lightning flashing past, and the steel shield condensed by Magneto with the power of magnetic control was instantly cut into two pieces. The escaping sword energy even left a deep mark on Magneto's helmet, specially used to prevent mind attacks. History is always written by the victors, and as the leader of Mutant, I will definitely reverse the order of the world and write a new history. No one can stop me. Magneto seemed to be completely irritated, his bloodshot eyes were gradually occupied by sternness and fanaticism, and even the old face became hideous and terrifying because of the extreme distortion. Under everyone's amazed eyes, Magneto soared up and hung in midair, the cloak behind him fluttering and whistling with the strong wind. He stretched his hands and fingers apart, guiding the electromagnetic field between the heaven and the earth, and the terrifying electromagnetic pulses shot densely. Even Colin's Susano couldn't resist them, and they collapsed into the air. As an alpha-level mutant, Magneto possesses an unrivaled ability. He can not only manipulate and create magnetic fields, but also control metal through the action of magnetic fields, and use metal as a weapon. Moreover, it can interfere with the Earth's magnetic field, counteract gravity, and fly at high speed, perception and control the surrounding electromagnetic spectrum, even at the atomic level. At the moment, Magneto has completely exploded with his amazing power. Boom. The entire statue of the goddess was shaking violently, looking like it was on the verge of falling. At this moment, the cyborg structure and steel substance inside it burst out of the body under the pull of the magnetic field gravity, gathered from all directions, and circled around Eric's head. Endless magnetic field and gravitational force need them to form a giant like a giant mountain, metal objects rumbling, containing terrifying power. When Eric's electromagnetic gravitational force pushed to the extreme, the giant steel mountain also enveloped Colin's head, as if it was about to crush him into a pulp with a monstrous deterrence. Careful! Chin-Gri exclaimed. Cyclops and others on the side also showed concern. Colin didn't show any fear when he saw this, instead he was full of fighting spirit, and a gleam of brilliance flashed in his eyes. The Sharingan in the eyes is running rapidly like a bloody windmill, and the power of chakra is surging wildly. At the same time, he quickly formed seals with both hands, muttering words in his mouth, and one after another, the powerful fire dragon technique sank into the sky. Thunder done. Qilin. Immediately afterwards, the sky was covered with dark clouds, thunder roared, and purple lightning danced wildly, as if the wrath of the gods was stirring the wind and clouds. With a wave of Qalin's palm, the thick thunder light turned into a thunder Qilin, and the overbearing chakra roared, and just when the giant steel mountain was about to fall, it bombarded it. Boom! Amidst the deafening explosions, the steel giant collapsed before the endless power of the thunder and lightning, not to mention the metal conducts electricity, and the surrounding magnetic field gravity also collapsed. Under the traction of the air machine, Magneto Eric's blood stained his clothes, his breath slipped to the bottom of the valley, and he fell from the sky. Thunder Qilin surged and roared, and the terrifying power of the thunder and lightning swept across all directions. Magneto Eric was shocked, spit out a big mouthful of bright red blood, and fell from the sky. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but gasp, their eyes full of shock and disbelief. Wolverine was stunned. He originally thought that Qilin, as a person in the business world, was a weak existence, but the strength Qilin showed directly refreshed his three views. It can be said that he admired Qilin even more. Although Qilin is a rich man with a lot of money, it does not prevent him from being fierce and murderous everywhere. This is really unbelievable. Qilin can summon meteor showers, and he can also trigger thunder from the nine heavens. Could it be that his ability is similar to Storm? Staring at Qilin, who put the vibranium sword into the scabbard, Chingele's beautiful eyes were full of shock and admiration. No, to be precise, he is much better than me. Storm's pretty face is also full of astonishment. As a mutant that can control the weather, Orlo can also summon lightning, but at most it is a strip lightning. After all, its power is limited. However, Qilin directly summoned the Wanjin thunder. It's really like the gods are angry, the momentum is mighty, and the ghosts and gods are changing. Hearing the amazement of the people beside him, Cyclops couldn't help frowning. You know, as the captain, Cyclops has always been the core of the team and is admired by others, but Qilin in front of him directly overshadows his limelight, which makes the lonely Cyclops envious and jealous. At the moment, Qilin brushed the dust off his body as if nothing had happened, turned around and walked over, saw the astonished expressions of Wolverine and the others, and said doubtfully, "What are you still doing? There is such a big commotion here, it's very someone will come soon. If you don't want to cause trouble, then go away quickly." After Qilin's reminder, Cyclops and other talents came to their senses. The statue of the goddess at the moment is already full of desolation and a mess, not to mention the strong magnetic field and the vision of the sky thunder just now have attracted the attention of others, and many forces are rushing here. Cyclops hurried to start the Blackbird fighter, and Wolverine entered the Blackbird fighter with Qilin, Jean Grey, Little Rascal and Storm, holding Eric, who was seriously injured and passed out. Accompanied by a burst of tearing air sounds, the Blackbird fighter jet left the Statue of Liberty and quickly sank into the sky above the clouds. This is where, after a long coma, Eric finally woke up leisurely from the coma, and his blurred vision gradually became clear. The first few figures that came into view were members of the X-Men and Colin Stark, who seriously injured him. Seeing this, Eric couldn't help shaking his spirits, trying to break free, but his torso was imprisoned, so he subconsciously stretched out his hands, trying to manipulate the surrounding metal substances, but the surrounding electromagnetic field gravitation did not respond, let alone sense to the presence of metal. Strange, why can't the electromagnetic field gravity be sensed? Eric was very surprised. When he raised his head and looked around with difficulty, he realized that he was in a room made of pure plastic and wood. Doors and windows, cabinets, and even all daily necessities are made of plastic wood, without any metal, and even the iron element in the air is almost spiritual. In such an environment, Magneto's magnetic control ability is completely useless, just like a lion that has lost its sharp claws and is locked in a zoo. Old friend, don't panic, this is Xavier's school, our mutant common home, but in order to prevent you from making a big fuss, we have properly modified the environment here. Professor X came slowly in a wheelchair. Although his face was haggard, there was still a gentle smile on his face. He spoke softly, trying to ease Eric's nervousness. "Charles, you really let me down, don't you forget what humans did to us. You shouldn't turn against me, but you should deal with those despicable humans." Eric slapped the edge of the bed vigorously with both hands, growling angrily and unwillingly. Seeing Eric's expression full of resentment, both Cyclops and Wolverine couldn't help but sigh. It has to be said that Eric's obsession is too deep. Eric, be rational, don't be blinded by hatred. Such an extreme approach can only cause both humans and mutants to lose. Professor X persuaded earnestly, trying to wake up Magneto's reason. But only Colin knew that Magneto's hatred for human beings was already deep-rooted, and it was so deep-rooted that he would not be shaken by a few words. Thinking about this, Colin took over the conversation and said, "It's better for you to live in Xavier's school temporarily than to be tied up in a dark prison. Take this opportunity, you can also study here and reflect on these things. Over the years. Colin Stark, I won't let you go," Eric said in a cold tone. "Someone said this before, but the grass on their graves is already tall. I hope you don't follow in their footsteps." Colin twitched his lips and said with a sneer, then he turned his head to look at Professor X. "Okay, I won't bother you old friends to reminisce about the old days, let's say goodbye first." Colin was about to leave, but he was retained by Professor X. He said to Colin eagerly, "Colin, should you consider joining X-Men? We need a strong and reliable partner." Hearing Professor X's sincere proposal, Colin couldn't help being slightly stunned, and Cyclops, Magneto and others at the side also cast their gazes in unison. Especially Chingele. Her beautiful eyes like the blue agate stared at Colin affectionately, her breathing was slightly condensed, and there was an inexplicable throbbing. At the moment, Professor X, Jean Grey, and others all looked at Colin with burning eyes. Professor X throws an olive branch, hoping that Colin can join the X-Men team. In his opinion, Colin's amazing cultivation can better protect the Earth. At the same time, because of his status as the chairman of Stark Industries, he may also be a link to maintain peace between humans and mutants. Facing the scorching eyes of everyone, Colin pondered for a while, then smiled. "Thank you, Professor, for your kindness, but I still like to be alone." X-Men is a strictly disciplined team, while Colin prefers to go with the flow and doesn't like the days of being restrained, so he declined the invitation of Professor X. Hey, everyone has their own ambitions, no matter what, the door of Xavier Ability Youth Academy is always open for you. Professor X sighed slightly. Chingele's beautiful eyes dimmed, with a look of loss. Colin also took a deep look at Chingele, who was showing a look of disappointment, and reminded Professor X, "Professor X, I know you have been worried that the Phoenix Force sleeping in Chingele's body will go berserk. Potentially dangerous, but if you blindly suppress it, it will only be counterproductive, and sometimes it is better to block it." "Is it better to block it?" Professor X murmured and repeated what Colin said, with a thoughtful look on his face. "Everyone, there will be a time later." After the words fell, Colin waved his hand at the crowd, and disappeared into the secret room made of plastic in a blink of an eye. Back at the residence at number 178A Brick Street, Colin recalled the battle with Magneto, learned more about Mutant's situation, and felt moved. It has to be said that Magneto's ability to manipulate the magnetic field is still very abnormal. It is somewhat lucky that he can defeat the opponent. After all, the torch of the goddess statue is at a high place, and the surrounding metal magnetic fields that can be manipulated are limited after all. If it is another environment, it is still unknown whether it can defeat Magneto. You should know that the levels of mutant are divided into 8 levels from high to low. Omega, Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, and Zeta. Magneto is an Alpha-level mutant, second only to the highest Omega level, and the one that stands on the pyramids. If calculated according to the level of gods, he should be regarded as a level godfather and other powerhouses, enough to rival the existence of Ancient One Mage and Odin. Further up, there are Omega-level mutants, such as the Berserk Phoenix, Iceman at its peak, and Apocalypse are all Omega-level. After their abilities are developed to the extreme, they all have the power to destroy the world and move the stars. In terms of realm judgment, they are equivalent to Silver Surfers, Celestials, and Captain Marvel in the Double Star State. These level single-universe special powerhouses. It's hard to imagine how powerful an old Magneto is, and how terrifying an Omega-level mutant is, Colin couldn't help thinking. Before the level single universe, the Heavenly Father's realm is a bottleneck that needs to be crossed first. Colin's eyes flickered with brilliance, and the desire for a breakthrough in his heart became stronger and stronger. In the early morning of the next day, After Colin left the house, he went straight to the next door, number 177A Brick Street, which is also one of the 3 most holy places, New York to holy place. As the saying goes, neighbors need to come and go frequently. The last time Ancient One Mage came to visit at home, Colin naturally also had to visit this neighbor's house, so we can get acquainted with each other after coming and going. With this in mind, Colin walked to Holy Place and was about to knock on the door. With a creaking sound, the door opened from the inside, and a black man with an extraordinary bearing poked his head out. This is the current guardian of New York to Holy Place, Mordo Mage. It's Mr. Colin, please come in. Seeing that it was Colin, Mordo Mage opened the door, raised his hand sideways, and greeted him inside. Ancient One Mage had already ordered that if this neighbor came to visit, he must not be neglected. You know I'm coming. It's Supreme Mage, she has been waiting for you. Colin nodded, and walked to the holy place. The space inside the holy place is much larger than it looks from the outside. The corridors here are like a labyrinth, storing a large number of magic props, including the levitating cloak, Watambo's wand, and the Book of Visandi. Definitely think to control these magic weapons, you must first obtain their approval. Mordo brought Colin to a magic teleportation array. Mr. Colin is here. Thank you. Colin said and stepped into the magic circle. The runes engraved in the magic circle flickered, and a white light beam rose from the bottom to envelop Colin. Colin suddenly felt dizzy, and when he came back to his senses, he found that he was already in a palace. I saw Ancient One Mage sitting on the futon, brewing a pot of hot tea, as if he had expected Colin's arrival, and said with a smile, Colin, welcome to Kamar Taj. Is this the headquarters of Supreme Mage? Colin's eyes wandered around the room. This temple is antique, elegant and simple, and the incense is curling up, adding a mysterious charm. Looking far away, you can see the rolling Himalayas like an ice dragon lying between the sky and the earth, blocking all the disturbances in the world and creating a pure land on earth. At the foot of the mountain, there is a city, Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal. There are prosperous temples here, and monk robes holding Buddhist beads and Nebo or women in Lisha can be seen walking among the old houses everywhere. The temples are full of smoke, and the streets paved with Chingshi bricks are mottled with time, filled with a holy and serene atmosphere. Humans and nature live in harmony, far away from the hustle and bustle of the world. If it weren't for the tourists wearing modern service among the crowd, it would be easy to mistake people for coming to the Middle Ages. Looking away from Kathmandu in the distance, Colin came to the center of the temple and sat down on the futon opposite the Ancient One Mage. Come on, how about some tea from Kamar Taj? After receiving the green tea from Ancient One Mage, Kalin drank it all in one gulp, and immediately felt a rich and soft fragrance permeating in his mouth, leaving a fragrance on his cheeks and teeth, which was indescribably refreshing. Not bad, but it has a different flavor. The tea at Colin's house is delicious because the tea leaves are all carefully selected high-quality tea leaves. The reason why Kamar Taj's tea is delicious is not because the tea is originally, but because it is full of rich aura, and it is even more wonderful after brewing with clean snow water flowing down from the snow-capped Himalayas. Not only is the tea fragrant, but drinking it is also beneficial to the human body. It can prolong life and cultivate one's morality. You don't seem surprised by such a secret realm. Ancient One Mage noticed that Colin was unexpectedly calm about the existence of such a secret place as Kamar Taj. There are even portals that span tens of thousands of miles. How strange is it that there is such a secret world at the foot of the Himalayan snow-capped mountains? Colin smiled disapprovingly. As a time traveler with God's perspective, Colin still knows a lot. However, I have a question that I would like to ask Ancient One Mage. My cultivation has been improving smoothly before, but now it is stagnant, and it is difficult to make a breakthrough. I don't know why. The eyes of Ancient One Mage are like stars reflected in the lake, reflecting each other, revealing a look of wisdom. She patiently explained to Colin. In fact, looking at the creatures in the world, everyone will encounter their own bottleneck period, just like the water in this teacup. It will overflow after pouring too much water. And if you want to hold more water, you need to add more cups. Human beings also have measure. The world is not only made of matter, there are also all kinds of monsters. Luli, mysterious magic and spiritual energy. Matter and spiritual energy jointly build this world, and the same is true for human beings. If you only pay attention to matter and not soul, ability will only treat one more favorably than another, and it will be difficult to continue on the road of cultivation in the long run. For example, in Kamar Taj, there are practitioners from all over the world with various skin colors. They not only practice the magic of Kamar Taj, but also practice various physical techniques to strengthen their bodies. And you are just the opposite, relying too much on the development of the physical body, but ignoring the cultivation of the power of the soul. It is as expected. The words of Ancient One Mage confirmed Colin's previous conjecture, and enlightenment arose in his heart. He relied too much on martial arts and exercises, but neglected the cultivation of the soul. Only the dual cultivation of magic and martial arts can break the barrier of the bottleneck and advance to another level. In the face of Colin's many confusions in cultivation, Ancient One Mage adhered to the concept of teaching without discrimination, and took the trouble to answer him, and Colin benefited a lot from it. Just as the two were discussing the truth about authentic tea, a portal with flames spinning rapidly appeared in the corner of the palace without warning. The next moment, a man with smoky makeup with two swords on his back stepped out of the portal, came to the palace. Disciples see Supreme Mage. The man with smoky makeup cupped his hands at Ancient One Mage, and said respectfully, Caecilius, you have finally returned from your travels. You have gained a lot from this trip. Well, I have traveled to many places, and I have a deeper understanding of the vastness and mystery of the multi-universe. Okay, practice is endless, keep working hard. Ancient One Mage nodded with satisfaction, and there was no lack of appreciation in his words. As a magic apprentice with outstanding ability, Caecilius is highly valued by Ancient One Mage, second only to Ancient One Mage and Kamar Taj. He was able to use the sling ring proficiently when he was 18 years old, and he was able to travel to and from the multidimensional universe unimpeded when he was less than 30 years old, obtain energy from other universes, and forge his own magic weapons and sharp weapons. Therefore, Ancient One Mage also placed high hopes on him, hoping that Caecilius could inherit his mantle and become the next Supreme Mage to protect the safety of the Earth. Who is this? Caecilius glanced out of the corner of his eye, and involuntarily looked at Colin, who was sitting across from Ancient One. And Colin also looked at the other party intentionally or unintentionally. Caecilius's smoky makeup is really shocking, even a little spicy eyes. This is Mr. Colin, our guest at Kamar Taj. I see. Caecilius frowned slightly, as if an undetectable strangeness flashed across his smoked eyes. Then, Caecilius took the lead to resign on the grounds that he was tired from the tour. Seeing the back of Caecilius leaving, Colin turned his eyes to Ancient One, and said meaningfully, Supreme Mage, there is something wrong with the expression of your eldest disciple. You mean? Ancient One showed a hint of puzzlement, but he understood that Colin was not an innocent person, and he must have his reasons for saying this. After understanding, Ancient One cast a soundproof spell to prevent the walls from having ears. As you know, the human universe is not the only one. Some are full of vigor and vitality, while others are full of evil and temptation, and even make people lose their minds and fall into the abyss of darkness. Your disciple, is it really possible to withstand such a temptation? In the original book, Caecilius is a proper young boy. In order to absorb the endless dark power, he betrayed the Ancient One and her teachings, and summoned Dormammu from the dark dimension to come to the earth through forbidden spells, which triggered the follow-up series of events. In fact, when Colin was reading the original book, he had a question in his mind. Since the Ancient One Mage's mana can predict the future, why not predict the future of Caecilius in advance, so that it can prevent the opponent from rebelling? Now Colin speculates that Ancient One Mage may have trusted him unconditionally because he valued this outstanding disciple too much, so that he failed to detect his depravity early. This is what the fans of the authorities said. Upon hearing Colin's words, Ancient One vaguely guessed something, and immediately began to count with her fingers. It seemed that she saw Caecilius in the future, her expression changed one after another, and finally she let out a long sigh. Ancient One had mixed feelings in her heart. She never thought that she would be betrayed by the disciple she trusted and relied on the most, and it would even lead to a catastrophe. Colin, thanks to your reminder, I didn't expect Caecilius to deviate from his original intention. If we don't stop it, the consequences will be disastrous. Why don't you stay in Kamar Taj for a few more days and let us wait and see what happens? Ancient One Law proposal said. Colin nodded in agreement after pondering for a while. Anyway, he has nothing to do recently, so he might as well stay in Kamar Taj for a few days. In such a holy place for cultivation, he might have a new understanding of his cultivation. In the following days, Colin temporarily stayed in Kamar Taj. The aura here is rich, ethereal and fresh, holy and peaceful, like a pure land on earth isolated from the hustle and bustle of the world. Staying in such a unique environment, even if you don't do anything, you can prolong your life and cultivate your health. People of different skin colors from all over the world are cultivating devoutly, enjoying simple happiness and pursuing the perfection of life. In fact, the origin of Kamar Taj can be traced back thousands of years ago to the father of the occult, Agamotto, who received the Eye of Agamotto from eternity, one of the 5 creation gods, which is Time Gem, and later founded the 3 great holy places, guarding the earth in unknown secrets. Generation after generation of Supreme Mage has continued to this day, and now it is Ancient One who has carried this burden. During his stay in Kamar Taj, Colin would often ask Ancient One about difficult problems in cultivation, and Ancient One upholds the concept of teaching without discrimination, and spares no effort to guide Colin's cultivation. With the guidance of Ancient One, Colin became transparent in many areas that were stuck in his cultivation and benefited a lot. At the same time, Colin also came into contact with the mysterious Visandi magic. Kamar Taj's magic, which is inherited in one continuous line, can be described as eccentric luli, with different forms. Among them, there are teleportation magic that can span thousands of miles, as well as secret techniques such as soul astral and mirror dimension, which are intricate and miraculous. Not to mention, when the soul is sublimated, it can even surpass the limit of the physical body. It's like in the original book, a patient with a broken spine practiced Visandi's magic, and his soul was sublimated so that the injured body healed as before, so that he sprinted on the court to play basketball. Although Colin has read the original work, the magic of Visandi shown in the original work is only the tip of the iceberg. Only when you are in Kamar Taj can you experience its magic. In this way, a brand new door opens in front of Colin. Open. In the courtyard of Kamar Taj. Ancient One is teaching Colin to practice teleportation magic. This is the sling ring, a magic prop that helps mage travel freely in various universes. Just imagine a place in your head, and then use the power of the sling ring to draw a portal to it. Accompanied by the guidance of Ancient One, Colin held the sling ring in his left hand, drew circles with his right hand, closed his eyes, and immersed himself in it, imagining the specific outline and picture of the Sea View Villa in his mind. After several failures, Colin finally succeeded in opening the magic door on the 8th attempt. About a quarter of an hour later, it went back and forth, and it was sent from the Sea View Villa. Next, Colin cast teleportation spells, going back and forth between Stark Industry, 178A Brick Street, Hell's Kitchen, and even the Great Wall in the Eastern Kingdom, Barry's Iron Tower. From the initial unfamiliarity to the gradual proficiency, the use of spells is constantly improving. Is this the spell of the portal? It's simply amazing. Colin looked down at the sling ring in his hand, eyes full of surprise. After mastering this teleportation spell, Colin can ignore the barrier of distance and cross from one end of the world to the other end. Whether it is used for teleportation or escape, it is extremely useful. Wow, Colin actually mastered the portal in less than 2 days. It's really extraordinary ability, it's too powerful. As expected, excellent people can do anything. It would be great if I could have his comprehension ability, otherwise I wouldn't have stayed in Kamar Taj for more than 10 years and only learned the superficial aspects. Seeing this scene, all the magic apprentices gathered around the courtyard exclaimed in unison, sincerely admiring, with surprise and envy in their eyes. However, amidst these surprised and envious eyes, there was a trace of sharp and hostile eyes. Colin followed the sharp gaze and found Caecilius among the crowd. Perhaps it was because the evil thoughts in Caecilius' heart offended Ancient One, and Ancient One's attitude towards Caecilius gradually became indifferent and alienated, no longer paying attention to him as before, and also taught himself not to try to spy on the evil and ominous world. Dark magic. However, Caecilius blamed Colin's appearance for the reason he was left out, and it was precisely because of this that he repelled and became hostile towards Colin. Caecilius gave Colin a jealous look, then disappeared into the crowd with a cold snort. On this day, Kai Lin Shu finished practicing magic and returned to his residence in Kamar Taj. Lying on his back on the soft bed, Colin looked at the ceiling above his head. Thoughts were churning in his mind. He was still recalling the many insights and gains from practicing the magic of Visandi during the day, and kept them in mind, and truly internalized them as his own practice. 4. Just when his eyelids were slightly heavy and he was about to fall asleep. Suddenly, the 10 magic rings in his hands trembled slightly at the same time, as if they had received a strange resonance, and they were restless. This Lord of the Rings contains a strange and treacherous demonic energy, and if it can resonate with these Lord of the Rings, it means that there is a kind of dark energy ready to move. Colin woke up suddenly, rushed out of the residence, followed the guidance of the Lord of the Rings, walked through the long corridor, and saw an antique magic library around the corner. Since the birth of civilization, the ancient venerables have obtained energy from other universes by reciting mantras, and cast their own shields and sharp weapons. After Agamotto founded Kamar Taj, he also copied the incantations and spells of these ancient venerables into books of magic secrets and stored them in this magic library. In this library, not only are there many wonderful Wisandi magics, but also sealed black magics containing ominous and taboo evil. Therefore, Kamar Taj has an iron rule, that is, the private collections of these ancient venerables can only be borrowed, but not used for practice. As an important place in Kamar Taj, the library is usually guarded by the librarian Wang. But at this moment the library was closed tightly, and there was no sign of the king, which was very strange, and there was a faint wailing sound from inside the library. It's weird. Seeing this situation, a strange look flashed in Colin's eyes. After hesitating for a moment, Colin tightened the magic ring and sling ring in his hand, and pushed open the door of the library with simple and colorful patterns. With a creak, Colin pushed open the library door. The inside of the library was a bit dim, with only 2 flickering wall lamps emitting faint light. A strange color flashed in Colin's eyes, and the scarlet Sharingan instantly expanded to cover the entire pupil. The clear visual dynamics allow Colin to see the fire clearly even in the dark, and everything in the dim environment can be seen clearly. I saw that the librarian was subdued by several people in strong clothes, and another person was rummaging through the bookshelf in the most hidden corner. Although the opponent turned his back to him, Colin recognized Caecilius at a glance from the Thor long swords on the opponent's back. In the blink of an eye, Colin already had a guess. It seems that Caecilius chose to surrender to Dormammu in the Dark Dimension after all, otherwise he would not have searched for the secret book of taboo rituals in the library that recorded the summoning of Dormammu. He is also accompanied by fanatics who believe in the Dark Dimension. Caecilius, are you going to betray Ancient One Mage and become Dormammu's dog-licking servant? Colin's pupils shrank slightly, and he said calmly. Colin, how did you appear here? I warn you, don't try to stop me. Caecilius frowned and said, a look of surprise flashed in his long and narrow black eyes. How did Colin know that he was looking for the forbidden secret tome? Caecilius ignored Colin's reprimand, and continued to search for the forbidden book on the bookshelf. Colin didn't waste his time persuading, but walked towards Caecilius. Stop him. Several of the zealots lunged at Colin, trying to stop him from approaching. Overreach. Colin chirped lightly, and the chakra in his body surged rapidly, condensing blue lightning in his palms. The arc flickered, and the thunder was lingering, like thousands of birds chirping. At the same time, Colin's footsteps stomped heavily on the ground, and his whole body rushed past the fanatics like an arrow off the string. Thunder and lightning raged, Chidori screamed. Before the menacing fanatics could react, they were instantly knocked down by the power of the thunder and lightning released by Colin. Glancing at the fanatics lying on the ground in disarray, Colin couldn't help but sneer. These are just fanatical believers who were bewitched by Caecilius. Although they are brave enough to die because of Caecilius' brainwashing, their real combat effectiveness is very weak, they are simply scumbags. On the other side, Caecilius took this opportunity to find the taboo tome from among the messy books, and was about to put the tome in his arms. But at the next moment, the secret book suddenly turned into purple butterflies without warning, fluttering and dancing in the library, looking very gorgeous. Caecilius couldn't care less about admiring the gorgeous scenery. His pupils shrank suddenly, and suddenly there was a hint of ominous premonition. The next moment, Ancient One straddled from the void, and stared at Caecilius with divine light from its deep eyes. You really let me down. It turned out that since Colin's reminder, Ancient One has been silently monitoring Caecilius' movements in order to lure the snake out of the hole. What he couldn't believe was that Caecilius actually betrayed Kamar Taj and embarked on a terrible path of destruction, so he rushed to stop it quickly. Caecilius, Ancient One, don't be hypocritical here. Didn't you have your current attainments because you once went to the dark dimension to absorb powerful dark energy? Only by summoning Lord Dormammu to descend can this world be immortalized. This remark seemed to hit the heart of Ancient One, who was startled and fell into hesitation. As the supreme mage who travels through various universes, Ancient One did not withstand the temptation and once went to the dark dimension, but it is precisely because of this that she was able to experience the horror and decay of Dormammu. Therefore, the disciples in the sect were forbidden to fall into the dark dimension, but in the eyes of Caecilius and other fanatics, it became a reason to distort the Ancient One. Caecilius smiled treacherously, and moved towards the corner of the wall. At the same time, he waved the sling ring with his left hand, and drew a circle with his right hand. A portal of sparks whirled on the corresponding wall, and then turned around with the rest of the fanatics. Into the portal. He's enslaved by Dormammu, he can't just let him go. Colin hastily reminded Ancient One via sound transmission. Hearing Colin's reminder, Ancient One withdrew his compassion, Baoshang's solemn face showed firmness, and he followed Caecilius. King, watch over the library. Colin escaped into the portal after exhorting the king. After Colin and Ancient One came to the portal, they found that they were in a bustling city, with towering steel jungles everywhere and cars passing by. Caecilius and the other zealots weaved through traffic and sprinted down a narrow alley, trying to escape Colin and Ancient One's pursuit. Mirror Dimension. Ancient One muttered words, the yellow light flickered, and two magic shields engraved with strange lines appeared in the palm of his hand, flying and coiling. At the same time, the surrounding space is also changing one after another. The whole world seemed to be turned upside down. Those originally static buildings were folded and rotated endlessly. High-rise buildings are constantly rotating and collapsing, and then standing again. The gravitational force and magnetic field are completely disordered here, and there is no law to follow. Bright and strange Lu Li, treacherous and unpredictable. This is the mirror dimension, a virtual world that is reflected from the real world, and what happens here will not affect the real world. But if you accidentally get lost here, the entrance to the dimension will be out of order, and you may fall into an endless vortex. Trapped in this mirror dimension, those fanatics besieged Ancient One with the intention of killing each other, making it difficult for Ancient One to escape for a while. In the nick of time, Colin urged the Windcaller Lord of the Rings, one of the 10 Lord of the Rings, to chase Caecilius at an unabated speed even in the mirror dimension under the buoyancy of the strong wind. Hateful. 2 magic shields also appeared in Caecilius' hands. After hovering in the midair, they pressed heavily on the ground, and then turned into 2 magic lightning bolts like vigorous horned dragons, rushing towards Colin while roaring. Kai Lin Yi patted the scabbard, and the vibranium sword came out of the scabbard in response, turning into a circular sword curtain under Colin's swing. However, only a crisp sound of bang was heard, and the vibranium sword was knocked out under the shock. Colin couldn't help raising his sword eyebrows slightly. It seems that the vibranium sword can only resist physical attacks, but it is difficult to resist such magical attacks. In the nick of time, Colin rolled to the side on the spot, narrowly passing by the 2 lightning bolts. I'll give you back one too. The next moment, Colin's hands quickly formed seals like rolling wheels. Immediately afterwards, a power of the thunder and lightning accumulated in the palm of his palm. After the boost of the Thundermaker of the Lord of the Rings, it turned into a more condensed and thicker magic lightning bomb out. Boom. Amidst the loud noise, the magical lightning just hit Caecilius' left arm, and he was instantly burned into charcoal by the lightning, and half of the skirt was stained red with blood. The boundless pain stimulated the nerves of the brain, making Caecilius almost faint. Just as he fell from the mirror dimension space, he endured the pain and set up a portal below. Then, in a flash, he submerged into the portal again and disappeared without a trace. Colin and Ancient One exchanged glances. Although Caecilius, who was seriously injured, ran away, but the other party was also deprived of an arm, and there was no trouble in a short time. The most important thing is to successfully keep the taboo tome that summons Dormammu to come, and not let him fall into the hands of Caecilius, otherwise the consequences will be disastrous. Then, Colin teamed up with Ancient One to eliminate the remaining fanatics and throw them into the mirror dimension, trapping them in an endless vortex from which they could never escape. With a casual move, Colin sucked back the vibranium sword that had fallen on the ground, and when he looked closely, there was a hole in Gold's sword, which was no longer as sharp as before. It seems that the vibranium sword can only resist physical blows after all, but it is not effective against magical damage. Colin put his sword back into its sheath, looked around in the mirror dimension world, saw that there was nothing left, and returned to Kamar Taj together with Ancient One. The turmoil in the library spread quickly in Kamar Taj, like a stone thrown into a calm lake, causing quite a shock. It is unexpected that Caecilius, the elder brother respected by everyone, betrayed Kamar Taj and turned to believe in the forbidden and unknown dark dimension. Fortunately, with the return of Ancient One and Colin, such an episode was calmed down, which stabilized people's hearts. At the same time, in order to prevent similar thefts from happening, Ancient One declared martial law in the magic library. In addition to the inherent Asgardian king of the library, some loyal apprentices with good strength were also arranged to guard the library together to prevent people with ulterior motives from stealing again. Seeing that this matter was settled, Colin didn't stay any longer, and when he was about to return to his residence, he was stopped by Ancient One Mage. Colin, thanks to you this time, otherwise this taboo tome was stolen, and the entire Kamar Taj and even the earth would be in a state of eternal doom. Ancient One smiled slightly, thinking about it now, he still has lingering fears. It's okay, I can't learn the Wyshandi magic you taught me in vain. Colin waved his hand disapprovingly. Now that Caecilius has betrayed, Kamar Taj has lost a pious Asgardian, and has gained a vicious rival. Kamar Taj is in a state of weakness and needs the help of a powerful apprentice like you. Will you be willing? Ancient One Mage stared at Colin, his deep and distant eyes were like stars reflected in the lake, reflecting each other, revealing a brilliant brilliance. Colin was slightly taken aback. As Ancient One said, the current Kamar Taj not only has to guard against the invasion of Dormammu, but also beware of this blackened believer, which can be said to be internal and external troubles. Ancient One was worried that he would not be able to support himself, so he wanted to invite himself to join. In fact, Colin also had the idea of joining Kamar Taj before, but compared to this, he still prefers an unfettered and comfortable life, but if he gives up such an opportunity to practice, it may be difficult for Colin to break through. Just when Colin was in a dilemma, the familiar and melodious electronic voice sounded in his ears again. When there is a bottleneck in cultivation, you can't stand still, but you need to make an appropriate choice. Now that the host has ushered in a critical turning point, please make your choice. Option 1. Practice in Kamar Taj for 10 years. The task is completed, and the reward is Magic Ability +1, the Spear of Agamotto. Option 2. Go to the Starfield battlefield with Carol to practice for 10 years. The task is completed, and the reward is Martial Arts Ability +1, Titan God Body. Option 3. Go to Wharton Business School for 10 years of further study. The task is completed, and the reward will be Commercial Ability +1, and a commercial street on War Street. Remarks. The three choices correspond to three different advanced directions, please make your choice carefully. The electronic sound in his ears made Colin's heart skip a beat. Compared with the past, the choice given by the system this time is quite special. It is no longer a single fixed choice, but a kind of planning and extension for the future path of advancement. This is like in the game, when the game character reaches a certain level, it will give you several awakening career options. Rather than choosing a career, it is better to say that it is to determine the future advancement path, which can be said to be very critical. The three options correspond to the three different advanced paths of magic, martial arts and business. In fact, Colin is very excited about these three options. To quote that classic sentence, I want them all. No matter which one you choose, Colin's ability in a certain aspect can be improved by leaps and bounds, and he will become an outstanding wizard. But this is not a multiple choice question on the test paper, but a single choice question, one of three choices, and in the end there can only be one clear answer. Facing Ancient One's scorching gaze, Colin rubbed his nose, carefully weighed the pros and cons, and said in a deep voice, "Okay, I agree to your request. I will practice Vishanti magic here for 10 years, and at the same time help Sid and Kamar Taj, to deter evil forces from other dimensions. But before that, I also hope to have 3 chapters with you. I want maximum freedom. The path of cultivation in Kamar Taj is also planned by myself. I can freely travel through the multidimensional universe, freely enter and exit the magic library, and borrow other Vishanti magic ancient books except the taboo secrets. Definitely, when necessary, I will help you protect the 3 most important holy places, but that doesn't mean I have to follow your instructions." Ancient One Mage nodded without hesitation. "Okay, as you said about the 3 chapters of the agreement, I only have one request to you, and that is not to repeat the mistakes of Caecilius. It's natural." After careful consideration, Colin still chose the first option. Martial arts and commercial abilities are certainly valuable, but the most urgent thing for Colin now is to sublimate his own soul power. Only in this way can martial arts, and soul reach the Trinity, thus hitting the Heavenly Father realm. If you want to sublimate your soul, staying in Kamar Taj to practice Vishanti's magic is naturally the fastest shortcut. Quote. What's more, the vibranium sword has been damaged right now and is no longer as powerful as before. Such weapons can no longer meet Colin's needs. What he needs is a magic weapon that can shake the gods. Thousands of years ago, when the secret art mage Agamotto created Kamar Taj, he also consecrated 3 major artifacts, namely the sword of Agamotto, the shield of Agamotto, and the god of Agamotto, spear. Agamotto's spear has the blessing of the magic Holy Spirit. It can last forever, it is enough to turn the universe upside down, the sky collapses, the earth sinks, pierces the stars, and even contains the power of law of heaven and earth. The mystery is endless. Not to mention that practicing in a pure land like Kamar Taj is also a great comfort in life. Even if you don't do anything, with the rich aura and holy snow water here, you can prolong your life, which is of great benefit. Such a beautiful thing, isn't it fragrant? Although the process of retreating for 10 years may be a bit boring, 10 years is like a drop in the ocean in front of the huge cosmic epic, and it will pass by in a flash. After comprehensive consideration, Colin made the decision to practice in Kamar Taj for 10 years. But before that, there are still some things that he needs to go back and deal with. Before officially entering the Kamar Taj practice, there are still some things waiting for Colin to deal with. Holding the sling ring in his left hand and drawing a circle in his right hand, Colin rushed into the portal constructed by the flames of time and space. The next moment, Colin appeared out of nowhere in the villa in the center of Nyoyo. At the moment Tony had just finished a reception and was lying on the sofa drunk, when he suddenly saw a person appearing, he couldn't help being shocked. Tony, look clearly, it's me. Colin walked towards him, smiling to comfort the frightened Tony. It turned out to be Big Brother. After seeing clearly that it was Colin, Tony let out a long sigh of relief. After taking a big sip of water, his drunken brain finally sobered up a bit, but he was a little puzzled. Why did the Big Brother come suddenly in the middle of the night? This time I'm here to tell you that I'm about to go to a secret realm to practice, and it will take at least 10 years. Ah, 10 years, but what about Stark Industries during this period? The fact that Colin possesses secret power is not a secret in the Stark family. Ever since Colin used Sha Kung Fu to disintegrate the plot of the Hydra organization to assassinate his father Howard, he has become even more obsessed with cultivation. It's just that 10 years is too long, and what should Stark Industry do, which makes Tony a little unprepared. So this burden will fall on you for the time being. Tony, you can't live under our protection all the time. You have to grow up as soon as possible so that you can be on your own. I have already planned the strategy for Stark Industry for the next 10 years, as long as you implement the plan step by step. What's more, with the assistance of your father and JARVIS, they can give you advice and check in secret. Quote. Tony hesitated in his heart, but he also understood that what the Big Brother said was true, the burden would fall on him after all. And Colin also left temporarily, and he will definitely return with a new attitude in the future. Tony, I have to tell you one more thing. When my father was studying Tesseract, he discovered the great potential of cosmic energy revolutionarily, and conceived elements that could release this energy. However, at that time, the technological means were outdated and the ambitions were not rewarded. In the end, the atomic structure was designed inside the layout of the Stark Industrial World Expo. Now the time has gradually matured. I believe that with your talents, you will be able to decipher this new type of element, and it will be very promising. Quote. Colin reveals the secret hidden in the World's Fair Pavilion. In fact, the implication of his words is that I went to Kamar Taj to practice, and you should not be lazy, and you must continue to study cutting-edge technologies, especially weapon systems. If new elements can be researched, the arms industry and the energy industry will usher in earth-shaking changes. Tony was surprised and delighted, and couldn't help but be full of longing for the future. Tony, come on, don't just focus on the Earth, our journey is the sea of stars. Colin patted Tony on the shoulder, with love and hope in his deep expression. Brothers worked together to cut gold. Colin and Tony, one practice martial arts, the other researches science and technology. Humanities can conquer the world, martial arts can conquer the world, the future can be expected. Tony, there will be a time later. After the words fell, Colin turned his head and jumped into the portal again. Watching Colin disappear out of thin air, Tony Stark clenched his fists and swore firmly, Big brother, don't worry, I will definitely protect Stark Industry for you. After leaving the villa, Colin came to the company again, and drew up the research and development of spaceships, investing in PIM technology and other plans. After everything was settled, Colin returned to Kamar Taj to start a 10-year practice, The Road. Although the matter of Colin entering the secret realm to practice was carried out very secretly, it still attracted the attention of various forces and spread like wildfire. Hydra is located in the headquarters of Western Europe, and the leader of Hydra couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief after learning about it. The evil spirit has finally left. In the past 10 years, Hydra should not have to worry about the risk of being destroyed. Nick Fury, the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., felt a little worried. Carol and Colin were originally the strongest superhero candidates in his mind, but one of them went to the Starfield battlefield, and the other entered the secret realm to retreat and practice. In the vacuum period of the next 10 years, how to protect the responsibility of guarding the Earth, this can't help but make Nick Fury have a strong sense of crisis, and he is more determined to implement the Avengers plan. As for many business giants in the Marvel world, companies such as Osborne Group, Hammer Military Industries, Teslac Group, Essex Corporation, PIM Technology, Life Foundation, etc. are mixed. The good news is that in the next 10 years, they may be able to reduce many obstacles in business and develop rapidly, but the worry is that when Colin returns 10 years later, they will definitely become even more unstoppable, both in terms of wisdom and heart. How will he lead the Stark Industry, and what kind of turbulent waves will be set off in the business world? With no time to pay attention to the reaction of the outside world, Colin let go of all distracting thoughts and practiced in Kamar Taj. Kamar Taj is holy and serene. It is bread, abundant with aura, coupled with the millennium snow water flowing down from the Himalayas. It can be called the last pure land of cultivation in the world. In such an environment, Colin's cultivation is also getting twice the result with half the effort, making rapid progress. The power of the soul, which was originally weak, is also growing day by day, and has been sublimated. Colin also has the ability to travel through various multidimensional universes, obtain energy from other universes, and coexist with these energies, taking advantage of the situation to understand the mysteries of the multi-universe. At the same time, with the permission of Ancient One, Colin can freely enter and exit the magic library. Except for the Forbidden Secret Tome, other ancient magic books can be borrowed and studied. For a while, Colin also practiced a lot of Vishanti magic from the library, and even the Rising Secret Art. Definitely, as a corresponding return, Colin also helped Ancient One resist many times of invasions by other dimensional forces during this period. Although these dimensional forces are not as threatening and erosive as Dormammu, such intensive and frequent intrusions will never be quelled by Ancient One alone. Therefore, Colin's help is undoubtedly allaying Ancient One's worries. In the day-to-day practice and tempering, Colin's soul power and overall strength are rising rapidly. Time flies, years shuttle. 10 years is like a flick of a finger, passing by in the blink of an eye. This day, Colin's rock-solid cultivation bottleneck finally showed signs of loosening, which also meant that the critical period for Colin's breakthrough was ushered in. Boom. With a buzzing sound in his mind, Colin's soul energy surged crazily in his body like a flood from the floodgates, breaking through the last crack in the bottleneck of his cultivation, and completed the fusion of body and soul, an unprecedented feat. The next moment, a terrifying aura rushed straight to Xiaohan, piercing the sky. Colin's eyes burst out with bright and eye-catching divine light, and his long hair danced wildly. The astonishing coercion exuded made all beasts kneel down, shaking the world. 10 years of practice, one breakthrough. Finally reached the Heavenly Father realm. Colin laughed out loud, unable to hide his excitement. Colin of at the moment is not only physically sanctified, but also his soul can travel freely, even extending beyond the earth. This vision of heaven and earth shocked countless magic apprentices, and Ancient One even came here after hearing the news. Seeing the terrifying aura exuded by Colin, his heart couldn't be more surprised. After a while, she suppressed the excitement in her heart and said to Colin, "Colin, your breakthrough is really timely. At this moment, there are already powerful alien enemies watching the Earth and preparing to attack the Earth. Compared with Kamar Taj, let's say, you are needed more there now." Colin frowned. Could it be that the Chitauri army is attacking? Just as Colin was thinking, the system prompt sounded in his mind at the right time. "Congratulations to the host, you have completed the task of practicing in Kamar Taj for 10 years, and now the task rewards magic ability +1, Agamotto's spear." Quote. As the words fell, a strange light disappeared into the center of Colin's eyebrows, and at the same time, a golden red flame spear appeared in his hand. With the blessing of magic ability, Colin's sense of magic elements is instantly more sensitive, and even the magic elements of water, fire, thunder, electricity, wood, light, darkness, etc. can be seen floating between the sky and the earth with the naked eye. He only needs to recruit beckoning, those elements will gather and be used by him. Then, Colin carefully looked at the Agamotto spear in his hand. The sharp tip of the spear shone brightly under the sun, and the 6-foot-long spear was indestructible, thick and powerful. When it was swung, it aroused astonishing power, as if a random blow could pierce the sky and shatter the void. I don't know how many times Agamotto tempered it to become such an artifact. There are many holy treasures in the magic world, but they can only be driven with the approval of the holy treasures. For example, the weapon of Baron Modu is the scepter obtained from the life court after traveling through the multidimensional universe. It is precisely because of this that he has been recognized by the scepter that Modu can use it freely. And when Colin received the system reward, he was also recognized by Agamotto's spear at the same time, and he was even able to communicate with it and sense its resonance. After 10 years of silence, it's time to go down the mountain. Colin's mouth curled up in excitement. Under the gaze of Ancient One, Colin was surrounded by endless magical elements, and disappeared on the mountain top with the spear of Agamotto. As Ancient One said, the Earth at the moment is facing a catastrophe. Instigated by Thanos, Loki colluded with the Chitauri army and jointly invaded the Earth, with Niuyo as the first to bear the brunt. Tens of thousands of Zeta Swiss soldiers straddled the flight device, along the space-time wormhole opened in the sky, continuously poured into the sky above New York, attacking the pedestrians on the street. There is also a half-biological, half-mechanical Leviathan, swimming in the air like a giant whale, constantly hitting the surrounding buildings and statues. In an instant, stone bricks splashed, smoke and dust billowed, and the sound of rumbling was endless. Bang bang bang. The center of the button exploded one after another, and flames appeared everywhere. Cars driving on the road also lost control and staggered, and were ignited by flames. Amidst the screams, the citizens of Niuyo fled in panic and hurriedly hid in the bunkers. Those who did not have time to hide in the bunkers fell under the gunfire of the Zeta Swiss soldiers. Under the trampling of the alien iron hooves, the entire center of New York was in chaos. At the moment, as the superhero team protecting the Earth, the Avengers are struggling. Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Hawkeye, Black Widow, plus a Green Titan who cannot control his emotions, they fought tenaciously, trying to resist the invasion of the Chitauri army. Listen up, guys. As a tactical commander with rich combat experience, Captain America gave full play to his ability at this time, and after judging the situation on the scene, he quickly made a command. Before we close that space-time wormhole, our first task is to maintain the situation. Hawkeye, you go to the top of the building and pay attention to their formation and soldiers. Iron Man, you are in charge of blocking. Anyone approaching 3 blocks must either invite him back or blow him into ashes. Thor, you'd better find a way to pinch the port of the space-time wormhole and hold them back. You can control the lightning and kill them. Green Titan, hit hard. Natasha Romanoff, we're here to keep fighting and free those under siege. With Captain America assigning tasks, everyone also began to act. With the help of Iron Man, Hawkeye came to the roof of a building, occupied the roof to observe the situation of the battlefield, and at the same time pulled the compound bow in his hand constantly. Amidst the sharp tearing air sounds, clusters of arrows carrying explosives shooting at the enemy, several Zeta Swiss soldiers who were in the sky fell down. Tony, incarnated as Iron Man, is wearing a red gold Mark 7 steel armor, making all kinds of dazzling and difficult moves under the support of the long-tail flame. While avoiding the firepower of the Zeta Swiss soldier, Iron Man sprayed out beams of pulsed energy beams from his palm, instantly piercing through the body of the enemy in front of him, and then turned his iron head to continue looking for the next target. And Thor flew to the edge of an office building near the space-time wormhole, and raised Mjolnir high. Boom! Kachacha! With the deafening sound of thunder, the thunder entrenched in the cloud flashed, and the lightning flowed, like thousands of silver snakes dancing wildly, containing terrifying power of heaven and earth. The next moment, the turbulent and domineering thunderbolt turned into a thick thunder column like a bucket, smashed down from the sky, and bombarded towards the wormhole. One by one, the Zeta Swiss soldiers were battered by lightning. After losing their center of gravity, they fell from the sky like scarecrows out of control, and their bodies were smashed to pieces. Speaking of Avengers, the one with the most destructive power is the Green Titan. He is like a muscular wild spirit, moving around in the mansion of the Steel Jungle. As long as he catches a Zeta Swiss soldier, he will die. The hammer exploded inside, and even rip them alive, doing their best to destroy them. As for Captain America and Natasha Romanoff, because they don't have the ability to fly into the sky, they can only attract the firepower from the ground as much as possible, and at the same time rescue the besieged crowd. Holding the vibranium shield, Captain America is like a brave warrior who is fearless, charging forward indomitably among the enemy groups. And Black Widow Natasha Romanoff is to play her agent's strengths, using cars and buildings as cover to attack approaching enemies. As one of the 3 major powers of the Avengers Alliance, Iron Man, who also flies into the sky and escapes from the ground, undertakes a large part of the combat missions. In the high altitude of New York, Iron Man is like a fast-moving steel eagle, shuttling between high-rise buildings. The pulse energy beam and laser cannon in the palm attack alternately, killing the enemy's life neatly. The nano-missiles launched from the shoulders roared out overwhelmingly, with powerful penetrating and destructive power, sweeping and defeating the Zeta Swiss soldiers and their flight devices along the way. However, among these enemies, Iron Man was most concerned about the giant Leviathan, which was huge in size and extremely powerful, just like a moving battleship. It rampaged through the city, destroying everything it touched like a bamboo, and in the cabin inside Leviathan, elite Zeta Swiss soldiers rushed out one after another and landed in the city to join the battle group. JARVIS, analyze its weaknesses. After a systematic analysis, the weakness of the giant Leviathan is that it moves slowly, and its huge size makes it easy to be the target of fire. Other than that, it has no weaknesses. The AI steward locked onto the giant Leviathan and turned on the thermal radiation scan, but the result made Tony frown. Slow movement, easy to be focused on fire, what kind of weakness is this? You must know that this Leviathan giant has rough skin and thick flesh, and even laser energy attacks are ineffective. It seems that we can only use that skill. Inside the armor, Tony made a certain decision in his mind. With a decision in mind, Tony Stark then maximized the power of the Mark 7. The engine composed of brand new elements was injected with powerful energy in an instant, condensed in the armor of the Mark 7 armor, and then turned into the condensed and turbulent quantum cluster cannon blasted out, penetrating the entire huge body of the Leviathan from front to back. Whoosh! Boom boom boom! The dense and continuous flow of high-energy particles collided crazily. The next moment, the electronic system around the Leviathan giant was immediately paralyzed, and the electric arc flickered. After a few weak struggles, it crashed heavily from a high altitude to the ground. In an instant, the flames soared into the sky, the black mist lingered, and a giant Leviathan lost its fighting power. Seeing this, Tony let out a long sigh of relief. Since his big brother Colin's instructions 10 years ago, Tony has devoted himself even more vigorously to scientific research. In the past 10 years, not only has the Mark 7 armor been developed in advance, but also based on the pulse quantum system carried on the Brive spacecraft, the steel armor has been endowed with a more powerful flight and firepower system. However, with the huge amounts of this powerful blow, more than half of the energy of the armor was consumed, which meant that Tony could no longer cast this powerful blow. Hey, even if you wipe out a Leviathan, it won't help, you know, behind me is the entire Chitauri army. Loki shouted over there, waving the evil god scepter in his hand, and aimed at Iron Man with a beam attack. Iron Man raised his hand to block Loki's blow. At the same time, he looked in the direction Loki pointed, and saw that on the Stark building, Professor Segwell, who was manipulated by Loki, had already set up a quantum space on the roof. Instrument. A blue and crystal beam of light runs through the sky and the earth, opening a dark and deep tunnel of quantum space in the sky. Even the full firepower of the Avengers cannot stop the Zeta Swiss soldiers and Leviathan monsters from pouring into the earth from the quantum space tunnel constantly. These alien invaders wreaked havoc in the center of New York just like locusts crossing the border, and spread in all directions. Those Zeta Swiss soldiers are okay, but there are more than a dozen Leviathan monsters besides that. These things are the real troublesome existence. As time goes by, the enemy's attacks will also intensify. Thinking of this, Tony can't help but feel a little tired and powerless, and a bitterness appears on the corner of his mouth. Big brother, where are you now? If you can hear my call, come back and help me, please. Look at the entire city of New York. There were explosions, flames burst out, and screams one after another. Broken vehicles crisscrossed in the middle of the road, and countless innocent citizens fell into a pool of blood, and were even swallowed by raging flames. Surrounded by ruins and ruins, the flames of war are raging, and many buildings have been reduced to ruins, which can be said to be shocking. In the United States, where individual heroism is prevalent, at this moment, while people are terrified, they are all looking forward to the arrival of the Savior. But in the face of such an unprecedented catastrophe, who can turn the tide? On in space carrier thousands of miles away. Nick Fury, Hill, Phil Coulson and others all gathered in front of the holographic screen, watching the war and turmoil happening in New York through the screen. All of them looked solemn and dignified. However, they were designed by Loki before, and when they were caught in the trap, even if they were rushing towards Niu with all their strength at this moment, it might not help the matter. The quantum space-time tunnel is opened, just like Pandora's box, full of endless dangers and disasters. Who can turn the tide and help the building to collapse? If only Carol or Colin were here. Seeing this shocking scene, Nick Fury couldn't help saying with emotion. As long as Carol or Colin appeared, it wouldn't be reduced to such a situation, Nick Fury couldn't help thinking. At such an urgent moment, Nick Fury couldn't help hesitation whether to activate the quantum pager that Carol left for him. In fact, he didn't want to use this pager unless it was absolutely necessary, but now he couldn't think of any other better way. Just when Nick Fury was hesitation, there was an exclamation in the space carrier. Look, what is that? Nick Fury followed the sound and looked on the screen, only to see that thousands of miles above New York suddenly appeared a strange door made of flames and streams. The next moment, a handsome man with sword-browed, star-eyed and imposing appearance stepped out of the strange door as if he had stepped across the endless void, and came into people's eyes. I saw him with long hair dancing violently, wearing a long robe and hunting and agitating, as if he was descending from an exile, with 10 magic rings on the 10 fingers of both hands, and a scarlet flame spear in his right hand, as sharp as a sword. The Falcon's gaze was scanning the entire war-torn city, and his eyebrows could not help but twitch. It's Colin Stark. Oh, thank goodness you're finally back. Nick Fury's eyes suddenly widened, and he couldn't help grinning. His dark face was full of excitement and surprise. This person is none other than Colin, who has completed 10 years of training and returned from Kamar Taj. He is finally back. The plot of Avengers Alliance 1 happened after all. Colin had a bird's-eye view of the chaotic scene in the entire New York neighborhood from a high place, and couldn't help murmuring. Although the arrival of Colin triggered the butterfly effect, which changed the trajectory of the Earth line in the Marvel world, the cosmic line did not change, and Loki and the Chitauri army still invaded the Earth. Okay, I'm worried that there is no place to display the combat power of the Heavenly Father realm. Colin stared, and a look of excitement flashed in his eyes. He clenched his fists tightly, and immediately made a crackling sound like roasted beans. The body of the dragon element showed its power, and a faint gold dragon-shaped totem appeared behind Colin. Thanks to the affinity of the magical wind attribute and the persistent practice of the gravity chamber, Colin can fly in the sky as he likes. I saw Colin's figure thundering, like a divine rainbow swooping down from midair, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of a Zeta Swiss soldier. Boom! Colin threw a no-frills punch. If you look at it with a magnifying glass, Colin's punch seems to be slow but fast, and the fist hit the Zeta Swiss soldier's armor with only faint ripples. However, at the next moment, with a muffled bang, the body of the Zeta Swiss soldier burst, was instantly blown to pieces, turned into dust and floated in the air. Shua, shua, shua. Colin was as fast as the wind, pulling afterimages in the sky above Niu. The power of the thousand forces condensed on the fist, bursting out from a single point, bursting out with several times the power, mixed with the sound of tigers roaring and dragons chanting. Chi chi chi. Bang bang bang. Boom boom boom. Those who were recruited all burst into shape, their bones were shattered, and blood spattered, and some of them even became the ghosts of Colin's punches before they even uttered a scream. Relying on the body of the dragon and the sanctified body after breaking through the realm of the Heavenly Father, Colin slaughtered all directions among the enemy group and set off a bloody storm. There is supreme power in his fist, a Zeta Swiss soldier with one punch, as if entering the land of no one. It really well explains what it means to kill an enemy like a chicken and a dog. The frightening fist wind swept all directions, because under the burst of too strong fist pressure, while killing the enemy with ease, at the same time, vortices rose up one after another, which is amazing. With Colin's incomparably gorgeous way of appearance, it also attracted the attention of thousands of people for a while, and instantly became the focus on the New York battlefield. Look what that gold figure is beating up aliens. Could he be Iron Man's teammate? Why haven't I seen him before? What a powerful divine power. Could it be that he is a god who came down from the sky to save us? Come and tell me that this is not an illusion. It's incredible. I don't know why he looks familiar. You mean you've seen gods before? Are you kidding me? Unbelievable exclamations erupted from the crowd. This caused many people who were fleeing in a hurry to stop, and they all stopped and looked up, all stunned and inexplicably shocked. Where did this god of killing come from? Slaughtering Zeta Swiss soldiers is like slaughtering chickens and dogs. This kind of combat power is too exaggerated. Is it true that the Savior has come? Who is this? There shouldn't be such a character among their Avengers. Loki thought he had the chance to win, and even began to imagine the scene of trampling all human beings under his feet after occupying the earth, but the next moment his face suddenly froze, and a look of shock and disbelief appeared on his handsome face. Not to mention Loki, even many citizens and policemen in New York didn't recognize him. 10 years is neither long nor short. In this ever-changing era of information explosion, it is always faster for people to forget than to remember. In 10 years, many people have almost forgotten Colin the Presence. It's Big Brother, did you hear my call? You're finally back. Tony didn't recognize him at first, because he was moving so fast that even Jarvis couldn't lock onto his image. However, perhaps due to his intuition, Tony finally recognized Colin's face from the lightning-fast figure. He was stunned for a moment, and then tears filled his eyes. He was so excited that he couldn't restrain it. At the moment, Tony's ears echoed again, the words that the Big Brother said to him before. Brothers work together to cut gold. Our journey is the sea of stars, wait for me to come back. Just when Tony was about to lose his hold, he finally waited for the return of the Big Brother, and hope was rekindled in his originally hopeless state of mind. When the members of the Avengers Alliance heard Tony's words in the communication channel, they all stared blankly. Big Brother. This savior who fell from the sky is Tony's big brother Colin Stark. Colin Stark, is he the eldest son of Howard Stark? Captain America Steve took a deep breath, thinking endlessly in his mind, thinking that he was transformed into a super soldier because he participated in Dr. Erkin's and Howard's super soldier project. As Howard's eldest son, Colin's astonishing cultivation is comparable to a god. Could it be that Howard launched a super god plan after that? Looking up at the scene of Colin beating the Zeta Swiss soldier, Hawkeye Barton swallowed deeply, and could not help but gasp. He had heard about Colin's legendary deeds from director Nick Fury more than once, but today he finally got his wish and got to see him. It really is extraordinary and shocking. Even Thor, who is regarded as a god, couldn't help but start to doubt at this time. Could it be that there is another god realm besides Asgard in the Nine Realms? Otherwise, how to explain Colin's supernatural power comparable to a god? As members of Tony, Captain America, Thor and others naturally knew more or less about the rumors of Colin Stark. He took over the Stark Enterprise at the age of 18 and created the spaceship, an epic-making product. Cultivating in a secret realm, there is no news at all. Unexpectedly, after 10 years, Colin will appear in front of the world again, and the way of appearance will be so special, as if the Savior has come to turn the tide, earth-shattering. Boom boom boom. Colin drew the bow and shot the arrow with both hands, and the surging punches blasted out like a violent storm. Wherever they passed, the Zeta Swiss soldier flew upside down, his body shattered, and Blue's blood splashed everywhere, turning into a rain of Blue's blood that fell all over the sky. The sky over the entire city of New York is filled with bloody storms, but these are all from those Zeta Swiss soldiers. All of a sudden, Colin's fighting spirit was high and he was happy. Before he knew it, he had killed thousands of alien enemies. Rather than saying that he is protecting the safety of the earth, it is better to say that he is testing his combat power after entering the Heavenly Father realm. These little guys are not enough to fight. Colin curled his lips and said with some distress. It's just extremely arrogant. When Loki not far away heard the words, the corner of his mouth twitched violently, almost spitting out a mouthful of old blood. This vast alien army is not enough to fight. You know, this is the Chitauri army that Loki managed to mobilize from Thanos, tens of thousands. But in front of Colin, he turned into a small guy who can be easily killed in seconds. Evil god Loki has never seen such an arrogant person since he was a child, and he is even more arrogant than him. But then, when Loki saw Colin's sharp, hawk-like gaze scanning the battlefield, his heart skipped a beat, and he immediately trembled with fear. He realized that Colin was looking for his next target like a hunter in the woods. Just as Loki guessed, Colin's eyes were quickly locked on the new target. The shadows that cover the sky and the sun pass over people's heads. Colin looked up, and saw that there were a dozen giant whale-like leviathans swimming in the sky. This is a mechanical creature mixed with biological and electronic machinery, like moving battleships. The body of the giant is enough to crash and destroy the buildings along the way, rumbling, crumbling, smashing rocks, and squashing the cars on the road. Leviathan Behemoth. Colin knew that Leviathan was the technological crystallization of the Chitauri, and only such a behemoth could barely arouse his interest in fighting. After locking onto a new target, Colin's body flickered, and he crossed a distance of tens of feet in an instant, and came in front of a giant Leviathan. At this moment, the giant Leviathan is like a rampaging warship, destroying wantonly, and charging towards Colin with an unstoppable momentum. Seeing this situation, Colin showed no fear, even passionate. Bang bang bang. Colin's power poured into his fists, and the next moment he rushed up. His fists were like a mountain of gods, wrapped in a huge force, and suddenly struck at the giant Leviathan. The world-shocking supreme power is condensed on the fist peak, and it surges out like a majestic and surging wave. Even the defensive armor on the body of the Leviathan monster has broken and damaged in many places, and the roar is endless. The huge body was stagnant. Da da da. The laser cannon mounted on the giant Leviathan fired suddenly, turning into a dense firepower network and roaring towards it, as if to beat Colin into a hornet's nest. Agamotto Spear. Murder intent flashed in Colin's eyes, and taking advantage of this opportunity, he immediately sacrificed Agamotto's spear. Agamotto's divine spear was completely wrapped in flames, and the tip of the spear was extremely sharp. Under the refraction of the sun, it reflected a biting cold light. Colin swung the Agamotto spear, which turned into an impenetrable gun screen, and the endless flames bounced all the laser artillery fire away. Immediately afterwards, Colin's wrist shook violently, and Gold's spear of victory turned into a splendid spear shadow, sweeping towards the giant Leviathan whose defensive armor had been destroyed like a lotus flower blooming. Agamotto's spear, endowed by the magic Holy Spirit with the power to pierce through everything, can tear all tough objects, and any defenses vulnerable to it. The extremely sharp gun shadow tore apart the little defense left by the giant Leviathan, and the dense penetration and destructive power even cut and pierced the giant Leviathan into thousands of holes. The core components inside were also shattered. The electric current flickered, and the internal devices exploded and destroyed one after another. Boom! With a deafening roar, the giant Leviathan fell from the sky whining, plowing a deep ravine on the ground, and the sky was full of dust. It's unbelievable that a giant alien mechanical beast can be wiped out so easily. Seeing this situation, members of the Avengers Alliance, such as the Green Titan and Thor, couldn't help but gasp, their mouths wide enough to hold 2 eggs. Among them, the most profound experience belongs to Iron Man Tony. You know, he spent a lot of effort just now, consuming more than half of the reactor energy to barely destroy a Leviathan, and there is no way to continue, but Colin, on the other hand, is as easy as picking something out of a bag. There is no doubt that the gap between the two sides is so insignificant. Compared with Big Brother Colin, Tony felt more and more that his strength was a bit insignificant. Faced with the facts, Tony was deeply aware of the gap between himself and his big brother. Colin single-handedly turned the tide and reversed the situation on the field, which gave the Avengers Alliance, which was already in crisis, a hope of victory again. Tony, what are you in a daze for? Just when Tony was feeling emotional, Colin's kind and magnetic voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Big brother, it's really timely for you to come back, otherwise me and those guys will be overwhelmed. How have you been in Kamar Taj all these years? Tony transformed brainwaves into speech, and when communicating with Colin, there was no lack of joy of reunion after a long absence in the words. Boy, now is not the time to reminisce about the past, remember what I told you. Definitely remember, brothers are of one heart, and their profits cut through gold. That's right, that's the reason now. You attract the firepower of the Zeta Swiss soldiers and Leviathan monsters, gather in our Stark building, and then annihilate them. Understood. Colin surveyed the situation on the field and quickly made a tactical plan. With the killing of all directions on the battlefield, Colin has already tested the extent of his combat power, so he also put away his intention of relaxing, and the next step is to end this dispute cleanly and neatly. Follow your gaze to the Stark building, where a blue and crystal beam of light runs through the sky and the earth, forming a tight quantum space-time tunnel, and those alien invaders are constantly entering the earth along that space-time tunnel. To untie the bell, the person who tied it has to be solved. The only way to resolve this dispute is to completely destroy that quantum space-time tunnel. Immediately afterwards, Tony repeated Colin's original words to the Avengers Alliance team members, and Captain America, Thor and others' eyes lit up immediately, they cheered up their morale, and followed Colin's plan. Hawkeye is guarding the commanding heights, and under the pull of the compound bow, it is as precise as a 100-step piercer, one after another fixed-point elimination of alien enemies that appear within the range. Thor waved Mjolnir, summoned a series of domineering and violent thunderbolts, which constantly crashed down from the sky, and at the same time, he himself attracted as much firepower as possible, and went straight to the Stark building. Black Widow Natasha Romanoff snatched a laser halberd from a Zeta Swiss soldier, and together with Captain America, they charged along the wide street, causing huge amounts of momentum and attracting many Zeta Swiss who landed on the ground soldiers, and then ran towards the Stark building without slowing down. Bang bang bang. The Green Titan Hulk played his destructive skills as usual, moving around the block recklessly, frantically blasting the enemies he saw, splashing rocks, and rumbling sounds one after another. His rage and uncontrollable play a huge amounts of role at this time, killing his opponents in fear and avoiding him. Definitely, Iron Man Tony Stark is the best at pulling hatred. Tony maximized the power of the Mark 7 armor, like a steel god of war. Under the impetus of the flame thruster, he made a series of difficult moves like juggling among the steel jungles. The pulsed energy beams and laser fire from the palm attack alternately, and nano-rockets are fired from the shoulders, achieving overwhelming AoE strikes. The enemy would either be reduced to ashes under such a hail of bullets, or he would lose the hatred value by him, and then chase after him. So with the passage of time, Iron Man has been followed by a large number of furious Zeta Swiss soldiers and Leviathan monsters unconsciously. HMPH, I really think of myself as the savior, so since this is what you want, the Chidori army, all the rest will be sent here to surround and wipe out Colin Stark. Loki also realized the strategic intention of the Avengers Alliance at this moment, and immediately decided to use all the tactics and gather all forces to deal with Colin. In Loki's view, as long as Colin, the backbone, is eliminated, the Avengers will become a mess, and all problems will be solved. It can all be solved. Following Loki's orders, all the Zeta Swiss soldiers and Leviathan monsters on the battlefield turned around in an instant, heading towards the Stark building like a crowd. The dense swarms turned into a huge shadow covering the sky and the sun like locusts crossing the border, flying over the buildings in New York, as if to completely swallow the entire area. And their target is Colin on the rooftop of the Stark building. This arc reactor is protected by a pure energy shield, which cannot be broken. Moreover, there are thousands of alien invaders. After all, human beings cannot escape this catastrophe. On the rooftop, Professor Segwell, who was manipulating the arc reactor, had already come to his senses, but it was too late for him to regret it at this moment, and he couldn't help sighing. Then, as if accepting his fate, Segwell closed his eyes in despair, waiting for the disaster to come. Oh, is that true? Colin twitched the corners of his lips, and there was a sense of humor in his words. Facing the overwhelming alien army, Colin showed no fear. This is the Stark building, and it is my territory. If you want to use this as a springboard to invade the Earth, you have to ask me whether I agree or not. As soon as the words fell, Colin once again swiped the spear of Agamotto and swept out. During the stirring of the divine spear, it turned into an aura of divine power and shattered inch by inch in all directions. As soon as those Zeta Swiss soldiers approached, they were exploded with a bang, pierced through their bodies by the spear light in an instant, and flew upside down, making it impossible to get close at all. Even the giant Leviathan, its thick-skinned and thick-skinned defenses are as fragile as paper in front of Agamotto's spear, easily torn apart. At the same time, the 6 superheroes Iron Man, Thor, Green Titan Hulk, Captain America, Hawkeye, and Natasha Romanoff have also come to Colin's side, and then surrounded Colin in the middle like a constellation of stars, for him a charged blow to delay time. Seeing this, Colin opened the reincarnation eye without hesitation, and the left eye showed the shape of a purple 6-curved jade-shaped reincarnation eye, and a strange and cold breath flowed out from it. Perfect Susano. Colin's hands quickly formed seals like wheels, and he muttered words. The next moment, dense purple flames emerged from Colin's body. These purple flames danced in the wind, turned into ribs, and attached arms to his body, forming the initial Susano. Immediately afterwards, blood vessels, bones, muscles, and armor were extended on this basis, and the body size also increased in the face of the wind, constantly getting bigger, until it turned into a complete Susano. Its file size has surpassed the mountain peak, showing the posture of a Valkyrie. It is dressed in the armor of Utengu, and the armor on the back has changed wings and is equipped with double swords, which can soar in the sky. During the 10 years of Colin's practice in Kamar Taj, his soul attainments have risen rapidly. At the same time, under the nourishment of his sublimated soul, his pupil power has also increased. With the pupil technique reincarnation eye, Susano has almost become a perfect metamorphosis. Perfect Susano can almost use the ninjutsu that the caster is good at. Its long sword can easily split mountains and meteorites, and even the light of infinite Tsukiyomi cannot penetrate the perfect Susano that Sasuke opened in the state of reincarnation. Almost. At the moment, Colin's body was fully attached to Susano, majestic, standing on the battlefield of New York like a Valkyrie. All of a sudden, a powerful aura erupted, which made the menacing Zeta Swiss soldiers shudder. They launched a fierce attack, intensive gunfire, and various attack beams, turning into a firepower net that surged towards Colin. Clang clang clang. With a dull sound, the rain of bullets was bounced off by Colin's Wutengu armor, and it turned out to be unscathed. Seeing this, Loki waved the evil god scepter quickly, and in an instant, a fiery magic bullet shot towards this side. Loki, stop your silly tricks and see if you haven't caused enough trouble. Thor quickly struck out a bolt of lightning, diffusing the magic bullet, and knocking Loki away at the same time. Then he turned his head to look at Colin's mighty body with huge amounts of power, and said in admiration, could it be that this god of war was released by the Heavenly Father realm? The divine power that came out 100 years ago, Thor had witnessed with his own eyes that his father, the god King Odin, had grown dozens of times in size, showing his divine power. But the scene in front of him is extremely similar to that divine power method. What Thor doesn't know is that Colin has already broken through the Heavenly Father realm. However, this full body of Susanoo is not something that can be displayed just by reaching the Heavenly Father realm, but an attack and defense that can only be summoned by the ultimate pupil power of Sharingan, one ultimate ninjutsu. Boom boom boom. Colin flicked his wrists and made a chopping motion to the sides. Correspondingly, Susanoo also pulled out two heavy and sharp giant swords from the scabbard, and with a roundabout slash, a fierce sword energy swept out, smashing Fang Yuan within 100 meters away. Enemies within are strangled to smash. After cleaning up the nearby miscellaneous soldiers, Colin raised his eyebrows and took out an ancient bow of Indra wrapped in chakra energy from his back, while the spear of Agamotto on the other side was resting on the arrow, above the strings. Indra's arrow is the strongest move Sasuke used in the Battle of the Valley of the End. It is the strongest arrow fired after absorbing the nine-tailed beast chakra. It is as powerful as Naruto's six-way oversized jade spiral shuriken, contains the power to destroy the world. Although Colin couldn't condense the chakra of the nine-tailed beasts, he was able to replace Indra's arrow with Agamotto's spear to launch this powerful blow. Shua, Shua, Shua. As the eyes of reincarnation turned, Colin's momentum rose and he continued to soar. Susanoo held Indra's bow handle with his left hand, and put Agamotto's spear on the string with his right hand. With a burst of strength, he slowly pulled the arrow string. All of a sudden, the magic aura between heaven and earth gathered from all directions, condensed on the tip of Agamotto's spear, and the target was directly aimed at the time-space wormhole in the sky, as well as Chi outside the wormhole. Terry Starship. In order for Colin to accumulate strength undisturbed, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Hawkeye, and Natasha Romanoff also showed their talents, using their own methods to block the enemy's attack, and the Stark building Fang Yuan 100 meters build a defense within the range. The enemy's offensive is getting more and more fierce. Yeah, now we can only hope that before the defense line is destroyed, Colin Stark can complete that blow. Success or failure depends on the blow. At first, the members of the Avengers Alliance could barely support it, but as time passed, the enemy's attacks intensified, and the line of defense showed faint signs of loosening and collapsing. The good news is that Susanoo has almost pulled the bow and arrow into a half-moon arc, and the magical aura between the heaven and the earth is constantly absorbed like 100 birds returning to their nests. It is precisely because the magical aura of heaven and earth is condensed on the spear, so it takes a lot of divine power to pull it an inch. Chi chi chi. When the bowstring was pulled into a full moon shape, the outer line 100 meters away happened to collapse, and the Zeta Swiss soldiers and all the Leviathan beasts poured in from the outer area like sharks smelling blood, going crazy straight towards the Stark building. At the same time, the aura between the heaven and the earth seemed to be drained instantly, and all of it was condensed on the tip of Agamotto's spear. The endless magic and spiritual power lingered, and the crossbow collapsed like a bright sun. Blooming bright and eye-catching light. Huge amounts of tornadoes and thunderbolts also revolved around Colin, which looked like a natural disaster. At this moment, as the spiritual energy drained, the world fell into a short-term chaos and viscous state, and time and space seemed to stop. Why is this artifact able to condense Midgard's aura? Is it the same artifact as Space Gem? Loki swallowed deeply, his brain was buzzing, his cracked eye sockets were full of disbelief. What a terrifying power, the gods in Legendary are nothing more than that. From an arms dealer to a powerful god, what has Colin Stark experienced in the past 10 years? Not to mention Loki, even the members of the Avengers Alliance present and countless New York citizens, at this moment, all their eyes were on Colin, their breathing was hot, and they even forgot to breathe. On the space carrier thousands of miles away, Everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D., including Nick Fury, also watched this scene intently through the holographic screen. Even the giant purple shadow sitting on the floating throne far away in time and space, he is watching this amazing scene on the Earth with burning eyes. Everyone held their breath and focused, eagerly waiting. When those magical auras were accumulated to the extreme, Colin suddenly let go of the arrow string. Shish. The next moment, driven by Indra's bow, Agamotto's divine spear turned into an extremely fierce lightning flash, wrapped in a violent tornado and the power of thunder and lightning, and went straight through the road connecting the Stark building with time and space. The quantum space tunnel of the wormhole, and then bombarded heavily on the Chidori battleship outside the wormhole. The earth-shattering blow from Indra's bow and Agamotto's spear is no less than the power of a nuclear bomb explosion, enough to level an island in an instant. Boom. Bang bang bang. After a short pause, the huge Chidori battleship was instantly destroyed, and its hull like a small palace was detonated inch by inch, and then, amidst deafening explosions, it was completely swallowed up by the flames all over the sky, transforming the ashes and wreckage died among the stars, and then disappeared in the closed space-time wormhole. At the critical moment, the space-time wormhole was closed, so the aftermath of the explosion did not reach the Earth. After the connection with the starship was cut off, the Zeta Swiss soldiers and Leviathan beasts left behind on the Earth were also paralyzed and failed, some fell from the sky, and some fell to the ground with a bang. After the silence of the quiet New York neighborhood, there was an eruption of extremely enthusiastic cheers. With the collapse of the space-time wormhole, a great war ended. Seeing that the situation was over, Loki turned his head and wanted to run. But how could Colin give him a chance? Making a pulling gesture with one hand, Susano's huge amounts of palm buckled like a five-finger mountain, grabbed Loki and threw it on the roof of Stark building like throwing a chicken. Thor took advantage of the momentum to catch Loki, and surrendered the evil god scepter in his hand. On the street, people cheered enthusiastically. Some wept with joy, while others hugged and comforted each other, immersed in the joy of helping the rest of their lives. Soon, police cars and ambulances arrived one after another. The police rescued the trapped people and launched a series of rescues, while the ambulance personnel also treated the wounded urgently. Iron Man, Captain America and other Avengers Alliance members breathed a sigh of relief, feeling relieved. After the tense and angry emotions were relieved, the Green Titan Hulk's body also slowly shrank, and Dr. Banner's original form was restored. Finally, they survived the catastrophe without any risk, otherwise, the whole of New York would probably fall under the iron heel of aliens, and the consequences would be disastrous. 15 At the moment, Colin put away his magical powers, and Susano behind him turned into purple smoke and disappeared into the air. Iron Man slowly fell from midair to the roof under the support of the jet tail flame, and the steel mask was automatically lifted, revealing a slightly haggard and joyful face. Tony touched the metal bracelet on his wrist, and with the mechanical sound of click, the Mark 7 battle armor disintegrated automatically, and turned into Red's flight compartment that was folded one by one like a suitcase. Brother, how about I was very cool just now? Tony was a little smug and authentic, not letting go of the opportunity to show off. Colin hit Tony on the back of the head with a backhand, and couldn't help but give him a blank look and said, "You brat, you're so pretty here." I took another look at Tony, not to mention the past 10 years, although Tony is still a bad fart, but he is also a little more mature and responsible, and has grown a lot in Invisible. As for Captain America, Thor, Green Titan, Black Widow, and Hawkeye staring at Loki, Loki couldn't help twitching the corner of his mouth when they saw him. Perhaps, there is some misunderstanding between us, or we come for a drink. Just when everyone was scolding Loki. With a ding, an elevator ascended to the floor. A few well-dressed and heavily armed people came out from the inside. They all looked at Kai-Lin Shi with a hint of fear in their eyes. The leader showed a certificate with the Trident logo, and pointed to the evil god scepter on the ground. "We belong to S.H.I.E.L.D. As the weapon of this invasion of Earth, we need to take this scepter away and investigate it." Seeing this, Colin couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly. According to Colin's understanding of the original work, he naturally understood the identities of these people at a glance, and they are not real members of S.H.I.E.L.D. To be precise, they are undercover agents placed by Hydra inside S.H.I.E.L.D. Now come here to get the evil god scepter, just to fish in troubled waters and steal the power of this evil god scepter. However, Captain America and others were unaware of this. After Captain America Steve stepped forward to verify the other party's identity, he turned to Thor and asked, "Thor, do you have any objections to this matter?" "No, anyway, this is indeed the weapon Loki used to invade the Earth, and it is understandable to give it to you Earthlings as a spoil of war for safekeeping." Thor shook his head, an apologetic look on his resolute face. After obtaining Thor's permission, the leading S.H.I.E.L.D. agent quickly put the evil god scepter into a storage box, asked Captain America a few words absent-mindedly, and left in a hurry. The corner of Colin's mouth curled into a sly arc. He didn't expose them on the spot, but quietly released a shadow duplication, transformed into the appearance of Captain America, quietly followed behind these fake agents, and then waited for the opportunity. After doing all this, Colin looked away from the elevator. Gululu. The next moment, Dr. Banner's stomach suddenly let out a cry of protest. He covered his shriveled belly, looking a little embarrassed. While transforming into a green Titan Hulk, Banner also consumes more physical energy. By this moment, he is already hungry. It's almost time for dinner, and Superhero has to stop work for dinner. There is a Turkish barbecue restaurant 2 streets away from here. Although I haven't been there, I want to taste the barbecue. Under Tony's suggestion, we went to have dinner together. Naturally, Colin has no objection to this. Although he is practicing in Kamar Taj, it does not mean that he has to live without food. Moreover, in order to deal with HYDRA's undercover agents, Colin has already sent his own duplication. 2 flowers bloom, each representing a branch. However, after those Hydra undercover agents entered the elevator, they couldn't wait to leave the Stark building and bring the evil god scepter back to the headquarters for research. This evil god scepter contains incomparably miraculous power. As long as it is researched, powerful weapon abilities can be developed, and then the Hydra organization can be revitalized. While the Hydra undercover agents were imagining the future to their heart's content, the elevator stopped when it descended to a certain floor, and Captain America Steve walked in from the outside. Face to face with the other party, Steve nodded slightly, and then entered the elevator as if nothing had happened, and was in the middle of a group of undercover agents, whose expressions became a little unnatural, and a quiet and delicate atmosphere fell into the elevator. Such a 373 scene is like a pack of huskies mixed with a wolf. When the atmosphere became stagnant, Steve took the lead to break the silence. "Many S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are rushing here outside. With so many of you, the target is too big, and it is easy to be suspected." When the Hydra undercover heard this, they were all a little surprised. Under the surprised eyes of these undercover agents, Steve walked up to the lead undercover agent, and whispered in his ear, "Hydra hail, I will help you bring back the evil god scepter." As soon as the words came out, the faces of everyone in the elevator changed, and they were both surprised and happy, with mixed feelings. Steve was also an undercover agent installed by Hydra. Otherwise, how would they know their secret passwords, and they also knew their secret passwords this time. Action task. This is simply unbelievable, subverting their 3 views. But after thinking about it, with Steve as the internal support, their actions can become smoother. After hesitating for a moment, the undercover leader handed over the storage box containing the evil god scepter to Steve. Steve took it and stepped out the moment the elevator opened, disappearing into the sea of people. Coming to a deserted street corner, Steve weighed the storage box in his hand, and a look of success flashed in his eyes. Turkey kebab 2 blocks from the Stark building. Colin dines with Tony, Thor, Steve and others. It was 2 streets away from the battlefield, so it was not affected at all, and everything in the restaurant was running normally, which allowed everyone to have a good barbecue. It is worth mentioning that after seeing Colin, the surrounding citizens all worshipped him and were very grateful, as if a devout believer had seen the Savior. "Tony, you didn't tell us that you actually have a big brother in the realm of the Heavenly Father." Thor is devouring the barbecue burger in his hand. After the previous 2 years of experience on Earth, Thor has gotten used to the food on Earth, and has become so addicted to it. "Even I can't imagine that in 10 years, the strength of my big brother has improved by leaps and bounds. It's simply unbelievable." Tony and the others looked at Colin together, not hiding the astonishment in their eyes. The scene just now is still vivid in his memory. Facing everyone's gaze, Colin shrugged his shoulders. "Don't you know now? In fact, before entering Kamar Taj practice, Colin was already in the quasi-heavenly father realm, and the reason why it caused such a big sensation now is because Colin showed his cultivation in front of the world for the first time, so it was so shocking. However, it is too incredible to shatter the quantum space-time tunnel constructed by the pure energy shield with just one blow, and it simply violates the common sense of physics. Banner pushed the frame of the glasses with his fingertips, gasping in amazement. Physical common sense. I'm afraid everyone here has already transcended the scope of common sense in physics. Captain America, who can wake up after being frozen by an iceberg for 70 years, a green monster named Hulk who turns into a green monster named Hulk whenever his heart beats faster when he is emotional, and an Asgard man who can control thunder and lightning, can't these be measured by physical common sense? Colin looked around at the people present, and gave a few examples casually. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help laughing. As Colin said, the reason why they can become a member of Avengers is because of their extraordinary abilities. Their original existence has long since broken the inherent worldview of the world. Even the worst Black Widow and Hawkeye, they are all outstanding human advanced agents. But if you really want to compare them, their so-called ability is different from Colin's, just like a cloud and mud. For example, now, Kay Linming saw them for the first time, and he had already taken the lead in seeing them and knew their origins. Maybe this is the miraculous ability of the foresight of the Heavenly Father realm, and everyone couldn't help thinking so. At this moment, Hawkeye took over the topic and said, however, what makes people a little curious is, where have you been to cultivate in the past 10 years, and why there is no news from you, as if the world has evaporated. In the past 10 years, under the instruction of director Nick Fury, their shield has investigated Colin's traces more than once, but in the end, they all disappeared without any news, which made Hawkeye, Natasha Romanoff and others feel quite puzzled. If it can be easily found by others, what kind of secret realm is it? Colin wiped the food residue from the corner of his mouth with a napkin, smiling half-smile. However, it is indeed a mysterious place, holy and peaceful, and there is an expert there who can dissolve the anger and hostility in people's hearts. Maybe Dr. Banner will be interested in it. Is there really such a tall man? Banner's eyes lit up, and he stood up from his seat. Because he was so excited, the knife and fork in his hand almost fell to the ground. Banner is a famous physicist. In an accident, he was irradiated by a large amount of radiation from a gamma bomb he made, causing his body to mutate. Later, whenever he is emotionally excited and his heart beats faster, he will turn into a green monster named Hulk. Because the transformation is often out of control, in order not to hurt the people around him, Banner wandered around the world looking for ways to control his anger. Even so, Banner's Hulk identity often caused devastating damage and messed up many things. Banner has a love-hate relationship with the Hulk, and the powers he possesses when he transforms into the Hulk allow him to take down some tricky foes. But at the same time, he will lose his mind and become indistinguishable from friend and foe, just like a time bomb that will detonate at any time, which makes Banner suffer a lot. There are many ways to control anger, but the results have little effect. Hey, Banner, relax, calm down your excitement before doing this, or we may have to face that big green guy. Seeing this, Natasha Romanoff quickly patted Banner on the back, and said a word of reminder. Even Captain America carried the vibranium shield on his hands, always on guard against Na's sudden heartbeat. Sorry, I was too impatient. After realizing his gaffe, Banner quickly took a deep breath, suppressed the excitement in his heart, and said to Colin. Can I trouble you to take me to visit that expert? It's natural. But before that, you'd better finish this sumptuous meal first, otherwise you will only be able to eat some light food in the future. Such a hard life is not something ordinary people can endure. In fact, when Colin looked back on his cultivation career in Kamar Taj for the past 10 years, it was good, but the fly in the ointment was that the food he ate was too bland, which was no different from the vegetarian meals eaten by ancient monks, so he practiced there. To be able to endure indifference and loneliness. Banner immediately swept away the food on the plate like a storm, and begged Colin to take him to that secret place. Seeing Banner's impatient appearance, Colin was a little bit dumbfounded. Under everyone's amazed eyes, Colin immediately made a tactic with his left hand and drew a circle in front of him with his right hand. The next moment, a portal with flames swirling around appeared in the restaurant. With the growth of cultivation and the addition of magic ability, Colin can already open the portal without sling ring, which is undoubtedly a huge amounts of improvement. Follow me now. When the portal opened wide, Colin stepped into the portal first, and instantly reached the other end of the portal across a long time and space. After a moment of hesitation, Banner followed closely behind. When Banner stepped into the portal, a whole new world came into view. In the distance, the snow-capped mountains are like a continuous ice dragon lying between the sky and the earth, blocking the hustle and bustle of the world, forming a pure land on earth, exuding a holy and peaceful atmosphere. On the streets of Kathmandu, monks holding Buddhist beads and Nibal girls wearing leashes shuttled back and forth, temples and green smoke could be seen everywhere, and bursts of Buddhist scriptures resounded through the city. The breeze mingled with frost hit his face, which made Banner feel calmer than ever before. In Kathmandu, there are nearly 3,000 temple buildings, and the roads are crisscrossed, making it easy to get lost. After Colin took Banner around 7 corners on the street, he opened an ordinary door and entered. This is Kamar Taj. After stepping through the wooden door, Banner's eyes lit up. The space inside is far larger than it looks from the outside, and the temples with cornices and corners towering all around, dragons and tigers squatting, echoing each other from afar. Moreover, it has a unique natural atmosphere, and there is a quiet and peaceful atmosphere everywhere, and human beings and nature can coexist harmoniously. People of different skin colors from all over the world are cultivating devoutly, enjoying simple happiness, and pursuing the perfection of life. In the courtyard, hundreds of magic apprentices are immersing themselves in practicing physical skills and magic. One after another, 190 magic halos flicker and flicker, looking very spectacular. Before Banner had time to appreciate the spectacular scene, Colin dragged him straight through the courtyard and into the main hall. In the temple surrounded by incense, Ancient One was holding an ancient magic book and reading it carefully. Hearing the sound of footsteps from far and near, Ancient One closed his eyes from the ancient magic book and cast a glance at Colin and Banner. Looked away. It seems that you have successfully dealt with those alien invaders. Compared to other dimensional forces coveting to holy place, this sudden attack by the Titans is nothing. Kei Lin Feng said lightly that the invasion of Loki and the Chitauri was in the final analysis just a test planned by Thanos, the purpose of which was to find out the strength of the Earth. However, because of Colin's great power, it should be able to play a deterrent effect, and Thanos should not act rashly against the Earth in the next few years. It is indeed the mage with the highest ability in Kamar Taj for hundreds of years, and it really did not disappoint. Ancient One nodded, her BFBH star-like eyes were filled with admiration, and a strong idea of passing the position of Supreme Mage to Colin also sprouted in her heart. This time I brought a friend over. Drive Banner, whenever your heart beats faster, you will turn into a green monster named Hulk, one of the members of the Avengers. I have heard of it for a long time. Ancient One put down the ancient magic book in his hand, looked at Banner with great interest, and walked towards this side at the same time. You know me. Banner pointed to himself and asked suspiciously. That's right, when you were resisting the alien invaders just now, I was secretly observing your movements. Ancient One nodded in disbelief. To be precise, when the battle broke out in the New York neighborhood just now, Ancient One teleported to New York to the holy place, and shot back the Chitauri who were about to destroy the holy place, but she moved in hiding and was not noticed by the Avengers, that's all. Mr. Colin said that coming here can solve the confusion that is lingering in my mind. That's right, Ben Mage does have a way. As he spoke, Ancient One's figure flashed, and in a blink of an eye, he traveled several feet away and came to Banner. Seeing this, Banner couldn't help but feel his heart tremble, his heartbeat suddenly accelerated, his veins were exposed immediately, his blood flowed backwards, and he faintly showed signs of going berserk. Before Banner went berserk, Ancient One Mage slapped Banner's chest. The next moment, Banner's soul suddenly broke away from the body, showing a state of weightlessness, and gradually got rid of the shackles of matter and gravity. The soul lifted off, and Kamar Taj appeared at the foot of Banner, and soon the entire Himalayas, and even the earth appeared at the foot of the investigator. Banner. When his soul ascended to outer space, a calling sounded in his ear. He turned his head to look after the sound, and saw a huge figure of green coming into view. Inside the palace, Banner's body has already fallen into a deep sleep. Kaylin understood that it was because Gu used a secret technique to make Banner's soul astral. In fact, Banner and Hulk can be understood as two personalities existing in one body at the same time. One is gentle and rational and full of wisdom, while the other is tyrannical and irrational. In the common situation, Banner will occupy the dominance of the body, and once the heartbeat speeds up and the emotions lose control, the second personality Hulk in the body will be awakened to compete for the dominance of the body. So in the final analysis, this is caused by the division of personality and soul. The method of Ancient One is to allow Banner to communicate with Hulk, another personality soul, so as to accept each other's existence and integrate into one. During the Avengers Alliance 4, the two souls of Banner and Hulk settled their differences and integrated well, which made it possible to maintain sanity even in the form of a Green Titan. And the secret method used by Ancient One will undoubtedly speed up the integration of the two. Colin, what are your plans for the future? You may wish to consider inheriting the title of Supreme Mage. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. Ancient One stared at Colin and tentatively said, Supreme Mage. This title is indeed resounding enough, but the responsibility behind it is not light. I have fulfilled my obligations during the 10 years of Kamar Taj training, so I don't want to live too tired. Besides, Kamar Taj will also usher in a chance soon. Colin said with a smile. Chance. When Ancient One heard this, a strange expression appeared on Baoshang's solemn face, and she pinched a few times with one hand. The next moment, Ancient One finally revealed a look of surprise, and couldn't help but smile. So that's what you meant. Colin cupped his hands at Ancient One. Supreme Mage, I'll leave my friend to you. Ancient One smiled. Well, there is still a sleeping place for Kamar Taj. Colin nodded, believing that Banner should be able to find a way to reconcile with Hulk and Kamar Taj. The next moment, Colin twitched the magic formula, escaped into the portal again, and left Kamar Taj under the watchful eyes of Ancient One. Colin believed that Banner would be able to find a way to reconcile with the Green Titan in Kamar Taj, so he did not continue to stay here, but returned to New York. 10 years is neither long nor short. Roam the streets of Manhattan. The whole world has undergone earth-shaking changes compared to 10 years ago. Row upon row of high-rise buildings stand, bustling and noisy. People passing by along the way, wearing beautiful and fashionable clothes, become a beautiful scenery on the street. The cars have also changed from the original old and dull style to a streamlined style, with equal emphasis on power and appearance. People's communication methods have also been upgraded from pagers and mobile phones to exquisite and smart mobile phones. Back to the Seaview Villa. This place is still the same, but because of the cleaning by the servants, the windows are always clean and spotless, as if nothing has changed. It is worth mentioning that the butler Jarvis passed away due to illness 3 years ago. Therefore, a new butler named Mike was naturally replaced in the villa. Gathering up his messy thoughts, Colin lay back on the soft sofa, and snapped his fingers. The next moment, a shadow came out of a certain room and handed the evil god scepter into Colin's hands. Holding the evil god scepter in his hand, Colin couldn't help looking up and down, and then his eyes fell on a gemstone inlaid on the top of the scepter that exudes a soft yellow light. Mind gem. Hey, Hydra wouldn't have thought of it. One day they would also fall into their best tricks. The corner of Colin's mouth curled up playfully. Mind Gem originally contains huge amounts of energy, which allows users to enter other people's minds, and also allows all dreams, thoughts and ideas to enter the user's brain. It enhances mental strength and increases mental ability. Even under the condition that other gems enhance its power, this gem can enter the mind of all existing things at the same time. Even a light touch can change the other party's mind according to the user's wishes. Colin flicked the thumb of his left hand, and the magic ring of the Divine Controller shone brightly, and a ray of magic power was faintly visible. The Lord of the Rings, its ability to control people's thoughts with irresistible force. It can be said that God Controller and Mind Gem both have the ability to reverse the will and control the mind, so can these two things be integrated together. With this in mind, Colin reached out and grabbed the Mind Gem. As soon as Colin touched the gem, a majestic and vast infinite gem's energy suddenly surged through his fingertips, as if to decay the surroundings and destroy everything he touched. However, thanks to Colin's indestructible dragon body, he easily withstood this energy shock. A wisp of strange magical energy wrapped the yellow mind gem, and slowly embedded it into the ring of the god controller. Among buzzing. With a violent trembling hum, the mind gem was embedded in the magic ring of the divine controller. In an instant, black and yellow rays of light intertwined, shining and flowing, and a magnificent psychokinesis centered on Colin, rolled and stirred in all directions, covering Manhattan, and even the whole New York. Colin was immersed in the mind, the god's telekinesis psychokinesis extended unimpeded in New York, and all the detected images were fed back into his mind in the form of pictures. With a single thought, one can detect conditions thousands of miles away, and even read and manipulate people's thoughts. In a Manhattan park, an old man with white hair was walking with a dog after dinner. After being in a trance for a while, the old man suddenly started singing and dancing in the park, dancing a very fashionable dance, accompanied by humming and ha-ha singing, which attracted the eyes and laughter of all the tourists in the park. On a shopping street in Queens, a couple went shopping arm in arm, their smiling faces brimming with sweet joy. However, the next moment the style of painting changed suddenly. The man slapped his girlfriend without warning, and the latter responded by raising his palm and slapping her in the face fiercely. Bang bang bang. The originally reciprocated, loved couple slapped together hysterically under the astonished gazes of passers-by. For a time, in Manhattan and even in many areas of New York, some unbelievable and bizarre events happened. Many people made some behaviors that changed their temperament drastically, which surprised the people around them. As everyone knows, the instigator of all this was caused by Colin, who was experimenting with the new ring. Mind Gem, the Lord of the Gods, the Lord of the Rings. After the two are combined into one, the manipulation of the mind is even more superb. The ability of Professor X is nothing more than that. If this is the case, let's call it the Lord of the Mind. Quote. Colin stroked the new magic ring on the thumb of his left hand, and couldn't help feeling hot and ecstatic. With the Lord of the Soul ring, it is undoubtedly possible to greatly improve his psychokinesis and completely make up for his shortcomings and deficiencies. In this way, Colin has no obvious weaknesses. There is also a very important point. Colin now owns Mind Gem, that is, he has obtained a piece of the puzzle of 6 infinite gems, which is a huge amount of dependence. If Thanos wants to collect infinite gems, Colin is a link that cannot be avoided. In other words, as long as Colin keeps this Mind Gem safe, Thanos will never be able to implement the cosmic birth plan, so that Colin will not have to worry about being silently obliterated by the Infinity Gauntlet one day. Continuing to test the power of the Mind Gem, Colin's thinking diverged, and the god's telekinesis psychokinesis drifted aimlessly over New York City, unknowingly extending to the lobby of the Trident building. Here, S.H.I.E.L.D. is holding an external conference. Although there are still many unknown enemies in the universe, I hope you believe in Avengers and Colin Stark. They will protect our safety at critical moments. Repel all enemies that come. In the hall, Nick Fury gave an impassioned speech in front of the media present, causing cheers from the scene. The purpose of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s press conference is to officially announce the debut of Avengers, and to eliminate people's sadness and fear after a big battle, so as to achieve the purpose of inspiring people. It is said that with the end of the New York War, the Chitauri Star's conspiracy to invade the Earth was disintegrated, and Loki, one of the initiators of this war, was also brought under control. In addition, there is another thing that caused a huge amount of sensation, that is the power that Colin has shown in front of the world. The news of Colin's return also swept through the entire Marvel world like a gust of wind, which shocked the military, political and business circles of the United States and all forces. The attitudes of all parties are particularly subtle. Some people try their best to win over Colin, thinking that he is an indispensable combat force against alien invasion, while others hold huge amounts of vigilance, and they think that Colin's supreme divine power is originally a huge amounts of threats. However, no matter what kind of attitude they hold, they all clearly realize that Colin's return is of extraordinary significance. Just like the return of a king, it is bound to stir up the situation, and even change the direction of the world. With the end of the war in New York, the original turmoil calmed down. There is no feast that never ends. The Avengers gathered together for the common purpose of protecting the Earth. Now that the crisis has been resolved, they have to go their separate ways and return to their lives. Hawkeye and Black Widow returned to S.H.I.E.L.D. to report on their duties and continued to complete the tasks assigned by their superiors. Dr. Banner lived in seclusion in Kamar Taj and learned how to control his emotions with Ancient One Mage. Tesseract and Loki were brought back to God's domain by Thor for processing, and asked God King Odin for help. Captain America took this opportunity to apply for a vacation, and revisited the old place to visit old comrades in arms and friends. As for Tony, he locked himself in the laboratory, tirelessly developing a new type of steel armor. Warmly welcome the return of the chairman. Papa, Papa. In the 780 meeting room, Stark Industry executives extended a warm welcome to Colin. The thunderous applause lasted for a long time, and the senior executives all looked at Colin with a look of admiration and worship. In the Battle of New York, Colin turned the tide and thwarted the invasion plot of Loki and the Chitauri. He was in the limelight for a while, and his reputation even overwhelmed the Avengers. In the eyes of everyone, Colin is like a savior, with a dazzling halo on his body, which makes people feel admiration in their hearts. Sitting on the main seat, Colin looked around the entire meeting room with piercing eyes, but he didn't find Tony's figure, so he couldn't help asking the assistant Mike behind him, "Where is Tony? Why didn't you come to the meeting?" Report to the chairman. The vice chairman has locked himself in the laboratory for the past few days without seeing anyone. It is said that he is researching a new type of steel armor. Mike replied, "So. Research on new armor." Colin frowned slightly, and after a little thought, he soon understood. If his guess was right, Tony must have suffered from post-war traumatic stress disorder, so much so that he became one of his inner demons. Just like in the original book, Tony began to rely too much on the ability of the iron armor, and developed a new iron armor day and night to soothe his anxiety and uneasiness, as if this would give him a sense of security. It is said that Tony is like a god with a mortal body, but as everyone knows, he is immortal after all, and he also has all the joys, sorrows and joys of mortals. Even with the invincible Mark armor, he can't resist the demons. Colin couldn't help thinking so. Without thinking about Tony anymore, Colin focused on the meeting. 10 years have passed, and the entire Stark industry has also realized the process of replacing the old, so many new faces appeared in the high-level meetings. Fortunately, Colin planned the development strategy of Stark Industry long before going to Kamar Taj, and Tony was assisted by Howard's staff, so 10 years later, the development of Stark Industry can be regarded as smooth. Over the past 10 years, while reducing the arms industry to a certain extent, Stark Industries has vigorously developed emerging technologies. It has made considerable achievements in the fields of energy, artificial intelligence, and aerospace. It distances itself from established companies like Tesseract. It is worth mentioning that during this period, high-tech companies such as AIM, Avant-Garde Technology, and Yada Corporation also began to emerge. While the entire technology circle and business circles cooperated with each other, competition became increasingly fierce. Even Stark Industries can't stay out of competition. For example, the current Stark industry is also facing some problems. For example, due to the large-scale damage to the Stark building caused by the New York War, it is necessary to relocate to new headquarters. Moreover, Stark's military industry is also facing severe challenges during the transition period, all of which need to find ways to deal with it. With the progress of the board meeting, Colin announced the joint venture Department of Disaster Control with the federal government to deal with the alien technology left after the New York War. At the same time, he also carried out some personnel transfers and deployed a New Year's strategic plan. After the meeting, Colin and Mike entered the elevator under the respectful eyes of the company's top management, and now they have to rush to other places to select a new building site. During the descent of the elevator, Colin looked far into the distance along the transparent elevator cover, and he could see most of New York City in his eyes. At the moment, many places in New York City still have traces of the aftermath of the war. Destroyed walls, broken stones and rubble, the scene of 1,000 things waiting to be built, in addition to the remains of Chitauri weapons and Leviathan beasts left here can be seen everywhere. It will undoubtedly take a process to make these repairs as before. With the sound of beep, the elevator door opened in response. As soon as he got out of the elevator, Colin heard arguing in the hall on the first floor. "If you are sensible, get out of here quickly. Now this place has been taken over by the Disaster Control Department. But I have already signed a contract with the city government, and I have the power to clean up the alien remnants in this area. You can't stop me like this. See it clearly, this is an execution order from the Disaster Control Department, and it has the joint seal of the federal government and Stark Industries on it. So before we drive away, you'd better take your people and get out of here. On one side are the staff of the Zhengfu Agency, and on the other side are the cleaners in work clothes. The two sides are arguing over a pile of alien flight devices left in the Stark Hall. At this moment, the person in charge of the sharp-eyed government organization recognized Colin, and ran over respectfully and said, "Hello, Mr. Colin. What happened here?" Colin asked curiously. The other party quickly explained, "Mr. Colin, as you know, we are from the Disaster Control Department. Following the executive order of Stark Industry and the federal government, we are going to clean up the alien garbage left in your company, but there is a guy who wants to get there first." Hearing the other party's words, Colin's eyes showed a hint of surprise. This should be the plot of Spider-Man: Homecoming, and the disputes surrounding the war garbage left by the Chidori people. Then, Colin followed the direction pointed by the other party, and looked at the middle-aged man with a hooked nose 3.9, thinning hair, and calloused hands not far away. At this moment, Colin instantly recognized the other party's identity, Ed Lien, who Lu called Vulture. Ed Ryan is an electronic engineer, good at electronics and mechanical engineering. In the near future, he also researched the Vulture battle suit, which became the old enemy of Spider-Man. Although these are war garbage left by the Chidori stars, in the hands of people like Edrian, they can be turned into treasures, and even converted into powerful weapons with huge amounts of advanced. This is a potential opportunity. As far as Colin knows, many forces are playing with it recently. Hydra, SHIELD, and even companies like Osborne Group and Hanmer Military Industry are also eyeing these war trash. The reason why Colin first registered with the federal government to set up a disaster control department is to be able to take all these Chidori technologies for himself. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.